Chapter 15:13. Release what? Everyone watched as the several dozen people, who had lost all color in their faces from crying, were herded toward the small side door at the northern city gate. Wei Nanfeng, Bailey Shi, and the others on the city gate tower were all stunned, and they hastily descended the city gate tower. Prince Mo held Arbor's small hand and floated to the side of the northern city gate's small side door, where he was met with a pair of wolf puppy-like eyes. He looked over and shot him a contemptuous look. ACI, this wolf puppy, was truly very persistent. Thankfully, his darling was a very strange little girl. ACI had been her enemy from the start, and she had never liked this person. Moreover, this hostile relationship was very difficult to change in the little girl's heart. Prince Mo, what are you doing? Pushing these fools out, are you trying to feed the corpse puppet army? Yas laughed mockingly. Feed them? Assie's words startled everyone, and they abruptly turned to look at the group of crying men and women. Most of them were in the prime of their lives, and there were also a few women among them. However, the most eye-catching one among these people was a slender woman wearing a thin red muslin dress. She should be a rather beautiful woman, but her hair was disheveled and her body was unbearably filthy, as though she had been viciously abused. Release these baits. Hui Feng waved his hand, and soldiers immediately came forward to drag away the crying, screaming, begging, and even fainting men and women. Wei Mingli was among these people. When she discovered that her group was about to be thrown out of the city, her entire face turned pale with fright. She frantically struggled with her arms and screamed under the escort of 2 soldiers, "You can't do this to me, you can't do this to me. I'm one of the second prince's people. Wei Mingli was about to be scared silly. She never knew that a person could be so unlucky when they were down on their luck. Ever since she failed to seduce His Highness the Crown Prince, she actually went downhill. First, she was mercilessly thrown into the death row prison by the second prince. No matter how she begged him, she was still mercilessly abandoned. It was only then that Wei Mingli realized that in the eyes of the second prince, no, in the eyes of those in power, she, Wei Mingli, was nothing more than a tiny ant. She didn't even have the chance to fight against fate and say no. Her life was worse than death. She was captured and sent to the death row prison. She was such a beautiful and powerless woman. It was obvious what would happen to her. She was repeatedly humiliated and abused in that dark prison, and her cries for help were ignored. Now that she finally had the chance to see the light of day again, she never imagined that these people wanted to use them, these death row prisoners, to feed the army of corpse puppets. Wei Mingli struggled madly and shouted harshly, "Why are you pushing us out as bait?" A whip landed on her body. The jailer who had escorted them out smiled mockingly at her. "You're a group of prisoners on death row who were originally going to be executed. Do you think you still have a way out?" "No, I'm not a prisoner on death row, I'm not. I'm Wei Mingli, Wei Mingli turned her head and immediately saw Arbor, who was standing on the side with a slight frown. Without thinking, she pounced toward Arbor's side. "Little sister Xiao Qiao. Save me, I'm Wei Mingli. Do you still remember me? It's me. Wei Mingli. Granny Nyo's granddaughter. Wei Mingli. It's over." Chapter 15:14. Little sister Xiao Qiao. Save me. Before Wei Mingli could reach Arbor, 2 soldiers rushed over and forcefully pinned her arms behind her back, forcing her to kneel on the ground. "How dare you offend the crown princess? Take her away." The soldiers held their knives to Wei Mingli's neck and pulled her with brute force. Don't pull me. You bunch of bastards, scram. Wei Mingli probably used every ounce of strength she had as she crazily pushed aside the 2 soldiers beside her and pounced at Arbor, toppling over. "What are you doing?" Arbor looked at this woman who abruptly rushed over in bafflement. He couldn't figure out why this person acted as if they were close friends and knew each other. How could this child still remember Wei Mingli? For a little girl who had faced blindness since young and had grown up slightly better, she could even forget ACI, let alone this Wei Mingli whom she had only met once. She completely couldn't remember, okay? She wasn't the crown prince who could instantly recognize any random Tom, Dick, or Harry that she had met before. Her little brain was only so big, and she still needed to remember more useful techniques. There was really no need to remember the faces of Tom, Dick, or Harry. There was no way she would admit that she was actually just a little face blind. The little fellow stood there in all seriousness and silently glared at Wei Mingli. After the crown prince tugged at his little hand, Arbor also took a small step back. Take her away. Mo Lien coldly swept a glance at Wei Mingli. The latter shuddered and suddenly went on her knees as if she had gone crazy. She kowtowed loudly and said, Your Highness, Your Highness. Please let me go. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I really know. Wei Mingli wept like a pear blossom with tears, looking extremely miserable and pitiful. I shouldn't have obeyed the second prince's orders and thought of ways to block your path and lure you in. It's my fault, my fault. Please be merciful and spare me this time. She was so regretful that her intestines turned green. His Highness is wise and mighty, how could he be so easily fooled? Second Prince Mo Lu had a hole in his head. He had thought of this lousy idea to trick the crown prince, but in the end, he had tricked her, Wei Mingli, instead. Now, the second prince was angry that she didn't keep the secret and told the crown prince everything. He was so angry that he chased this traitor out of the second prince's residence and even threw her into prison. But what could she do? She was only a weak girl. If it was anyone else, they would have been tied up in a dungeon by a group of vicious people and tortured to extort a confession. Other than confessing properly, they would have no other choice. Actually, Wei Mingli didn't know that second Prince Mo Lu was in a much more miserable state than she was. This fellow's scheme against the crown prince failed, and after being seen through by the crown prince, he embarked on a pitiful path of self-destruction. Now, the few remaining profitable businesses in his hands had all been exterminated by the crown prince. There was no way for him to survive. Rui Pavilion had already changed owners. Even if the second prince wanted to do something else, he probably wouldn't have the money to spare in the future. Wei Mingli also didn't know that second Prince Mo Lu hated that he couldn't tear her to shreds right now. The crown prince didn't have much of a reaction to Wei Mingli's sobbing. On the other hand, Arbor's small face completely scrunched up, and his gaze landed firmly on Wei Mingli's face. So you're that female scoundrel who blocked the crown prince's path? Arbor's gaze instantly chilled as he sized Wei Mingli up. Chapter 15:15. Woman? Female scoundrel? When Wei Mingli heard Arbor call her that, she couldn't help but shudder in anger. However, she kept her mouth shut and didn't say anything. She didn't dare utter a single word to refute Arbor. Because she knew very well that the crown prince's current expression was very unsightly. It was a grim expression that said he wanted to immediately push her out to feed the zombies. She really was a bit scared. Why is she among the prisoners on death row? The crown prince was also perplexed. He had indeed ordered for a portion of the extremely vicious prisoners on death row to be gathered and pushed out of the city gate tower as bait. However, although this woman Wei Mingli had offended him, her crime didn't warrant death. He was just curious as to why she was among the prisoners on death row. Replying to Your Highness. This woman was sent here by His Highness the Second Prince. She has been staying in the Ministry of Justice's death row prison for this period of time, one of the jailers who came along quickly and cleverly replied. There were two meanings behind his words. Mo Lu had sent her over, and Mo Lu hoped that this woman would die. They didn't act on their own and followed the Crown Prince's instructions to bring out a portion of the prisoners on death row. Unfortunately, this woman called Wei Mingli just happened to be among this group of prisoners on death row. Mo Lien frowned slightly and waved her hand. Since it's second royal brother's intention, then push her out as bait as well. When Prince Mo said this, his expression was placid without the slightest ripple. When Wei Mingli heard this, she instantly felt like the world was falling apart. She originally thought that His Highness the Crown Prince would definitely release her after learning the truth. After all, from the Crown Prince's tone, he didn't pay much attention to an insignificant minor character like her. Besides, she was just a pitiful woman. Shouldn't His Highness the Crown Prince take pity on a weak woman like her? Of course, as long as she left this wretched place and found a way out, why would she worry about not finding a chance to exact revenge in the future? She remembered every detail of how the second prince treated her. There was also the Crown Prince and this stoic-faced Crown Princess in front of her. Also, there were also those stinky men in prison. There were too many. There were truly too many people who had wronged her. She would definitely get back at them one day. But now, she actually didn't have the chance. Why? Why? Wei Mingli struggled in terror as she glared at the Crown Prince in astonishment. Second Imperial brother wants you dead, Prince Mo reluctantly explained. Of course, I can't let my brother down. The corners of Wei Nanfeng and the others' mouths twitched. Could this brat be any more shameless? TSK, since when did this master value his own brother so much? He had never seen or heard of such a thing before. Pull him away. Mo Lien waved her hand, and Wei Mingli suddenly acted as if she had lost her mind. She pushed a soldier to the ground with all her might and rushed to Arbor's side. You bitch, I really didn't expect that you would disregard kinship like this and incite His Highness the Crown Prince to deal with me. Arbor! Exclamation point. Everyone was speechless. What did I instigate? I really want to ask you, how did I instigate the Crown Prince? From the beginning to the end, she had been standing here and watching the show. She hadn't said more than 3 sentences. How could she burn her head like this? Xiaomi couldn't help but burst into laughter. She felt that from her angle, Miss Chiao's small expression was very comical and amusing. Chapter 15-16. Also, what was with the kinship she was talking about? Seeing that Wei Mingli was lunging over, there was no need for Arbor to do anything. The Crown Prince directly sent a flying kick over without the slightest bit of protective feelings for the fairer sex and sent Wei Mingli tumbling over, landing head first on the ground with a thud. Arbor was perplexed and looked up at His Highness the Crown Prince. She's your relative? Everyone turned their heads away speechlessly. Prince Mo couldn't help but laugh. She seemed to be lunging at you just now. I don't know her. Arbor shook her head solemnly. Everyone was well aware of her temperament and rolled their eyes one after another. Especially Xiaomi. She knew her younger sister too well. How could a child who couldn't even recognize young Master ACI recognize a passerby in front of her? Wasn't that a joke? You don't know me? You said you don't know me? Before Arbor could finish speaking, Wei Mingli turned to look at Arbor furiously. The Crown Prince's kick just now was a bit heavy, and she couldn't get up after lying on the ground for a long time. She could only turn her head to glare at him. I said I'm Granny Mio's granddaughter. Granny Mio is from the same village as your mother, Wei Ziqin. What kind of relative was this? There was no way they could even reach the end of it. Arbor's originally stoic little face instantly turned incomparably sinister. There's always some baffling people coming to me to claim kinship. The Qiao family was like this previously. The Mu family of China was like this later on. This way something in front of her was also like this. It was as if she was some cat or dog. It didn't matter if she was abandoned, but when she was happy and wanted to claim her back, she had to be deeply grateful. It was as if she had to happily acknowledge anyone who was her relative. Was that the case? Was she such a casual person? Have you asked for my opinion? Have you respected my wishes? Who do you think you are? Do I have to acknowledge you just because you say you want to claim kinship? The sudden cold anger, the icy tone, and the emotionless eyes instantly made the group of children who wanted to laugh all suppress their laughter in their hearts. The little guy seemed to be angry. Wei Nanfeng and the rest felt that it was better for them not to laugh, lest they add fuel to the fire and be ridiculed by the little thing for no reason. However, her words didn't seem to be completely targeted at Wei Mingli. It was as if she was venting all the pent-up anger in her heart at Wei Mingli. Do I have to happily acknowledge someone who I wouldn't have contacted for hundreds of years when they suddenly pop up and claim to be mine? Do we still have to serve you? Do you think there's such an easy thing in this world? Arbor's cold gaze swept over Wei Mingli. Relatives. Heh. Arbor sneered, the Kayaben family who claim to be my relatives are probably all dead in the western wastelands. There are also some people who claim to be my relatives. Sooner or later, they will die in my hands. What about you? What do you think, as my relative? What kind of fate awaits you? Those Tom, Dick, and Harry relatives of mine don't seem to be people with long lives. There was absolute silence all around. There were so many people on the city gate tower fighting the zombies downstairs, but when their little crown princess released an extremely icy aura, everyone silently shut their mouths and even started to lower their breathing. Throw her down. Chapter 15-17. A furious rebuke exploded in everyone's ears like a sudden clap of thunder. Everyone's hearts inexplicably trembled along with it. They didn't know, it was their misconception. They kept feeling that every time the little crown princess got angry, it was as if the earth quaked and the mountains swayed, scaring everyone so much that they didn't dare to move a muscle. Wei Mingli's pupils contracted, and she hastily shrieked, "What are you doing? Let go of me. Let go. Ah. You can't treat me like this. Arbor, Arbor. You slut. How can you face your mother by doing this? Ah. Wei Mingli only felt as if she had suddenly lost all gravity as she was abruptly thrown down from the city gate tower, smashing into the battlefield. The last thing she saw was the little girl's icy gaze, which contained a trace of mockery and was looking at her without any warmth. How could there be such a ruthless little girl in this world? She had already brought up Wei Ziqin, this great Buddha. Logically speaking, on account of her mother, she wouldn't touch her, Wei Mingli, no matter what. Why would she still throw her down? How could she know that the thorn in Arbor's heart called the Divine Province's Mu clan had truly pierced her too deeply? Upon hearing the word relative, she thought of the Divine Province's Mu clan's 7th Master Mu and that repulsive Old Bai. Although Old Bai was already dead, the Divine Province's Mu clan absolutely wouldn't let her off. Therefore, she needed to construct a large-scale shielding talisman array above the Mo Kingdom capital. After this talisman array was constructed, it could effectively prevent people from the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces from using special passageways and spatial transportation talisman arrays to come to the Mo Kingdom capital for at least 5 years. There were only a few fixed locations in the capital that could allow people from the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces to transport over. She had already asked Mo Lian about this. This location wasn't random, and it was normally within the capital of several large countries. In addition, in order to avoid Heavenly Law's eyes, 99% of the cultivators from the upper realm who use special passageways and spatial talisman arrays to transport over were very low-key and wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. Thus, when the time came, she only needed to draw a few more talisman arrays and hand them over to Wei Nanfeng, Bailey Shi, and the others. At least, she could be at ease for 5 years. As for 5 years later, Arbor sneered in his heart. If 5 years were not enough for her to grow to the point where she could fight against the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture, then her growth was too slow. Previously, when he made a bet with 7th Master Mu and said 10 years, 7th Master Mu's eyes revealed a very incredulous look. She must have thought that it was impossible for her to catch up with the Mu family of the Divine Land within 10 years. However, the real number of years she had set for herself was 5 years. The Mu family of the Divine Prefecture, Humph, is nothing more than this. Compared to her, she had only one at the starting line. Who said that she couldn't catch up to her later? If he wanted to completely control his own fate, he had to stand above all the other forces. At that time, it would be up to her whether she wanted to recognize this family or not. No one could force her. Because forcing her would be useless. It would only deepen her reaction. I don't know if you're prepared to die. Arbor turned around and walked to the edge of the gate tower with a frosty expression. Wei Nanfeng and his group inexplicably trembled their small bodies. What a scary girl. It wasn't easy being her family's relative either. And at this moment, that group of death row prisoners had already been thrown outside the city, attracting the attention of a large group of zombies in the front row. Chapter 15:18. Now was the time. Mo Lien stroked Arbor's head and instructed her to stay here before walking towards the side door first. Open the side door. Team 1's body cultivators, follow me. Yu Xiu raised his arm and shouted as he quickly followed behind the Crown Prince. The leader of the Dragon Saliva Guard, Yu Xiu, led around 500 robust body cultivators out of the side door with the Crown Prince. This team was like a sharp knife that cut straight into the middle of the zombie army. Immediately, the corpse puppet army, which had a rather large lineup, was scattered in two directions. The mystic cultivators on the city gate tower quickly filled in the gaps and bombarded the zombies that were scattered to the sides with mystic energy. Everyone watched excitedly as the Crown Prince led his team forward and disposed of no less than 100 zombies in a matter of minutes. His Highness the Crown Prince's strength made people feel a bit puzzled. This man who appeared gentle on the surface was like an abyss. No matter how deep you dug, he always gave people the feeling that he was bottomless. Hui Feng jumped down from the city gate tower and handed the latest news from the hidden night pavilion to Prince Mo. Your Highness, the 12th Prince has already led Hui Fan and 2,000 royal guardsmen to intercept them. A cold smile surfaced on Mo Lien's lips. Suddenly, he creased his brows and looked up at the indistinct purple-crimson lightning bolts on the horizon. Heavenly law, what's the hurry for? That's right, now was the time. The Mo Lien seal that he had suppressed for so many years was finally going to be released. An hour ago. Commandery Princess En had suddenly been taken out of the vassal prince's court and locked up in the woodshed. This made Commandery Princess En, who had been feeling very vexed these past few days, feel a deep sense of despair. She threw herself at the woodshed's door hysterically and pounded on it with all her might. She could only hear Su's intermittent cries outside the door in annoyance, but it was completely useless. At the same time, the vassal prince of Nan's court was filled with rows of men with red kerchiefs on their heads. The great king is licentious and tyrannical. The crown prince dotes on his treacherous consort. Now, he has caused the people of northern Mo to be destitute and zombies to run rampant everywhere. It's time for us to retaliate. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, commanded, Red Scarf Guards, my brave warriors. Are you afraid of death? I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. All right. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, shouted angrily. Then let's pick up our weapons for Moi. For our poor people. Kill. 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 The 2,000 Red Scarf Guards were slowly nurtured by him over many years. As the saying goes, soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Since the great king was unrighteous and gave him a withered woman to be his wife, he had no choice but to accept it. Then, he naturally didn't need to talk to them about benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust. Of course, the current Cho Fu completely did not remember that he had previously wholeheartedly wanted to marry Commandery Princess En. He could only think of the humiliation he had suffered from that woman when he had consummated his marriage with her. No, it was the crown prince who humiliated her. Because that damned woman actually called him crown prince when she was making love with him. It really dealt a blow to his self-confidence as a man. He also occasionally recalled the unfair treatment he had received on the day of his wedding, as well as how the entire vassal prince of Nan's estate had become the laughingstock of the entire Mo kingdom capital. It was all this muddle-headed great king's fault. Since that was the case, then don't blame him for being heartless and unrighteous. Chapter 1519. At this time, the northern city gate welcomed a spectacular black fire burning down the city. Everyone standing on the city gate tower had already stopped what they were doing and collectively stared dumbfoundedly at that tall man with a frivolous back below the city gate tower. This too? Wasn't this too powerful? In that split second just now, Crown Prince Mo had soared into the air, and layer after layer of black fog had floated around him. After Wei Nanfeng and the rest took a closer look, they realized that it wasn't black fog at all. It was clearly ink-colored lotus flowers revolving around him. These clusters of ink-colored lotus flowers abruptly spread out in all directions like the mark of death. Soon after, everyone heard a series of explosions that made them sick to their stomachs, coming from all directions. The black bone sword in Duan Yu's hand nearly fell to the ground. Even his Jade Heaven's 9 thunder didn't cause such destructive power, alright? Look at what this Prince Mo did. Just like a primitive destructive maniac, he towered in the air and looked down at the horde of zombies. Clusters of black flames rose from his fingers and gathered to form the lotus seal of death, instantly attacking the zombie army below. In that instant, everyone only saw the black flames crisscrossing back and forth, dancing in the air. Anything that dared to come into contact with it didn't have a good ending. Their bones were instantly roasted until they broke apart like a pile of shattered bones. This indiscriminate group attack simply stupefied everyone. Terrifying. One person's strength could actually be this strong? Duan Yu blinked and suddenly threw away his sword before charging down as well. Fuck. I also want to kill these zombies to vent my anger because that person is too infuriating. Why is the difference so huge? Brother Duan Yu, don't be rash. Situ Yi also hurriedly chased after him. After Mo Lian's lotus seal of death annihilated a large batch of zombies, more than half of the zombies on the battlefield had already been eliminated. After Duan Yu and Situ Yi jumped down, they each released mystic energy and directly tore a small group of zombies into ashes. Upon seeing this, Arbor also hastily dashed down. While the others were fighting corpse puppets, she followed behind them and picked up essence crystals. Her small face was full of seriousness. These cores were all going to be given to hubby, so naturally, the more the better. After Situ Yi chased away the zombies, he couldn't help but be amused when he turned to see the little fellow happily picking up cores. Little junior sister, what are you picking up? Why aren't you giving senior brother some? It's useless for you. Arbor threw the cores one by one into the brocade pouch and very quickly collected more than half of the pouch full of cores. Situ Yi pursed his lips and elbowed Duan Yu. Go ask little junior sister for a few. What's the use of the cores? Xian Beast crystal cores, at least they could be absorbed and used. Although Xian Beast crystal cores were filled with explosive energy, at least they were still somewhat useful. The crystals in these zombies' heads are useless. As he spoke, Duan Yu purposely flipped through the heads of the zombies under him and took out 2 or 3 crystals about the size of a grain of rice before running to give them to Arbor. Situ Yi speechlessly rolled his eyes. This punk. Ga ga ga. The North City Gate's main gate was pulled up by the winch, and the entire North City Gate was gradually being opened. Hui Feng led a group of armored soldiers and rushed out into the battlefield to clean up the mess. Seeing that there weren't many zombies left, Mo Lian sent Arbor a look. Let's go. Chapter 1520. Northern Mo's Royal Palace. Under Kang Jian's signboard building. Dressed in black armor, the vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, coldly gazed at the youth in front of him. The youth was dressed in a purple and blue cloak and wielded a sword. He crossed his horse and blocked Cho Fu's path with a dense mass of people behind him. Everyone formed a circle and howled as they aimed their spears at the red scarf guards behind the vassal prince of Nan. Vassal prince of Nan, are you plotting a rebellion today? Aside from the frivolous look in Mo Shi-er's eyes, there was a bit of graveness. Your 12th Highness, let me give you a word of advice. It's not too late to withdraw now. I really don't know where vassal prince gets his confidence from. Mou sneered. The old vassal prince of an Enan accompanied ancestor father to conquer the world, but you juniors want to completely ruin his reputation for loyalty. Unfilial descendants like you probably don't have any meaning in existing. Mou raised his sword and roared with an icy gaze, everyone, listen to my order. The vassal prince of an Enan, Cho Fu, has brought troops into the palace with malicious intentions. He is now under the great king's orders to kill all those who rebel on the spot. Behind him, the tide-like soldiers charged towards the red scarf guards led by the vassal prince of an Enan. The two sides collided with each other like tidal waves, abruptly crashing into each other. At the same time, the great king was pacing back and forth in his bedchamber. Seeing that he had already paced back and forth more than 30 times, the Empress Dowager couldn't resist roaring at her son, sit down. Royal Mother, this son truly can't figure it out. Why would the vassal prince of an Enan bring troops into the palace with the intention of rebelling without rhyme or reason? The Empress Dowager inwardly rolled her eyes, but she still maintained a straight face. There are many things you can't figure out. Sit down. The vassal prince of an Enan's family had long been involved in all kinds of subtle actions. It was just that the great king was busy with this beauty every day and reciting poems and painting with his concubines in his spare time, so he didn't have the leisure to pay attention to them. The old great king of the Mo kingdom lifted the corner of his robe and sat in front of his mother with an embarrassed expression. At this time, in his bedchamber, other than the Empress Dowager and Empress Zhao, He Jiaoyi, noble Lady Ying, and a few other beauties that were more important to him had been summoned by him. The imperial concubines sat there staring at each other, their faces filled with panic. From the sound of it, it seemed like there was a commotion outside. Not long after, Gong Chang trotted in with his two chubby little legs, panting. Great King, Empress Dowager. What's going on outside? The great king jumped up from the stool in a hurry. Cho Fu brought 2,000 red scarf guards and barged into Kong Jianmen, but was stopped by the 12th prince. What? The great king slapped the rack of treasures beside him and roared angrily, this disloyal, unfilial disciple, dares to risk universal condemnation and come here to force the abdication? Sit down. The Empress Dowager exasperatedly berated him. This was the consequence of not properly educating him from a young age and worrying about him when he was old. At this time, the Empress Dowager was filled with regret as she fiercely glared at the great king. The great king sat back down on the stool with a stifled heart and used his gaze to signal Gong Chang and to quickly continue speaking. Gong Chang was a shrewd person. As soon as he received the great king's gaze, he immediately understood and continued, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager, the great king. No need to worry too much. Chapter 1521. The 12th prince led 2,000 royal guards to block them outside Kong Jian's gate. Cho Fu won't be able to rush in for a while, Gong Chang hastily explained. They're already at Kong Jian's gate. The great king grumbled, this Cho Fu. Isn't he worried about bringing disaster to his family by doing such a thing? Where is the vassal king of an Enan? Does the vassal king of an Enan know that his son committed a grave mistake? When the Empress Dowager heard this, she wished for nothing more than to immediately go up and give her son 2 heavy kowtows without any regard for her image. Was there even a need to ask? Anyone would know that the vassal king of an Enan must be in the know if he still hadn't shown up after such a major incident happened, all right. She and the late king had a heroic reputation in vain. How did she give birth to such a pig-headed, pig-brained son? Truly a pig-headed teammate. If this guy wasn't her only son, perhaps she would have long crippled him. How could he be so stupid? Seeing that his mother was glaring at him with a hateful look as if she expected better from him, the king immediately shriveled up. The great king subconsciously shifted his stool back and coughed lightly. Royal Mother, for safety's sake, let's stay here and wait for the crown prince for the time being. The Empress Dowager grunted in agreement and placed her hands on her knees, not saying anything else. Rather, it was He Jiaoyi who said somewhat anxiously, Great King, when this concubine came out, little 15th was feeling unwell and was still in the bedchamber. Could something have happened? The great king couldn't help but be startled. He then looked at the little boy in He Jiaoyi's hand. Royal father, royal father. Mo Shirlu sprinted toward the great king's leg and called out with a yearning expression. Royal father, royal father. The great king lovingly picked up his youngest son. At the side, He Jiaoyi also looked at her son with a smile, her eyes brimming with motherly radiance. Don't worry, Chou Fu was stopped by little 12th and can't enter the royal court's inner court at all. The moment the great king finished speaking, a burst of rampant laughter came from the door. Mo Lei was startled and hurriedly turned his head to look at the door. Vassal king of Nan. The great king of Mo stared in shock at this man who had suddenly appeared at the entrance of his bedchamber. There was some uncertainty in his eyes. Why are you here? The vassal king of Nan gazed coldly at the great king and suddenly raised his hand. The great king subconsciously hugged his son, Mo Shirjiu, and took a step back. He Jiaoyi, Empress Zhao, noble Lady Ying, and the other royal concubines also turned to look at the vassal king of Nan at the entrance. The old prince was dressed in black armor and had a long saber at his side. He looked just as mighty as he used to be. Just as he was about to step through the door, over 1,000 red scarf guards holding long sabers suddenly rushed in behind him. I've waited for so long, planned for so long, and finally, this day has come. The vassal king of Nan sneered at the people in the hall. Great king, do you still think that His Highness the Crown Prince will rush back to save you? The great king quickly nodded. Don't do anything rash. My prince will be back soon. Heh heh. The old prince sneered at him. Stop dreaming. Do you know how many zombies are congested at the northern city gate? You fatuous ruler. You also have a day like this. You. The great king of Mo was furious. He pointed at the vassal king of Nan and finally roared after holding it in for a long time. Impudent. Swish. The sabers in the red scarf guards' hands were uniformly pointed in the great king's direction. Chapter 1522. This scene alarmed Empress Zhao, and she subconsciously rushed forward. She abruptly grabbed the great king's wrist and dragged him back a few steps. Vassal king of Nan, you truly have guts. Where are the guards outside? The great king also bellowed. Guards? You're talking about those good-for-nothings? The vassal king of Nan narrowed his eyes in disdain. Your Highness the Crown Prince still thinks that by placing the 12th prince outside Kong Jian's gate, he can withstand my vassal king of Nan's estate's elite troops, the Red Scarf Guards? Ha ha ha. Truly naive. At this time, the Empress Dowager spoke with an unperturbed expression. She didn't shout herself hoarse like the great king and only said very calmly, all these years, the vassal king of Nan's estate secretly nurtured 5,000 Red Scarf Guards. Ha ha ha. The vassal king of Nan laughed arrogantly. How about it? The Empress Dowager also didn't expect it, right? That's not the case. The Empress Dowager shook her head and still said calmly, we already knew that your vassal king of Nan's estate is constantly making big and small moves. There must be a conspiracy. According to your daily expenses, we can more or less speculate that you might be secretly raising private troops, the Empress Dowager said indifferently. Such a simple logic isn't hard to understand. The vassal king of Nan's expression instantly darkened. He felt that he had lost all his face after hearing the Empress Dowager's words. Empress Dowager, why argue with this humble subject again? He didn't come today to reminisce about old times with this Empress Dowager and the great king. The vassal king of Nan unsheathed the sword at his waist and walked step by step towards the terrified great king and the royal concubines. The Empress Dowager suddenly flung open her sleeve, and a long and continuous mystic energy wrapped over, instantly erecting a defensive barrier in front of everyone. The vassal king of Nan involuntarily sneered and clapped his hands twice. Two men in their early 50s, one tall and one short, walked out from behind him. They looked like mystic realm experts. Empress Dowager, don't blame this humble subject for being vicious and merciless. It's just that you're a hindrance here. If he didn't get rid of this eyesore Empress Dowager, how could he free himself to deal with that incapable ruler? The vassal king of Nan had long arranged for two mystic realm experts whose cultivations were on par with the Empress Dowager's to fight to the death. He had just captured the muddle-headed Great King. As long as they had the Great King in their hands, what was there to be afraid of? At that time, the Empress Dowager would naturally be captured. Immediately after that, it was that hateful Northern Prince Mo's turn, as well as the culprit who had killed her daughter, the Crown Princess. These people should not have a good ending. However, the vassal king of Nan's idea was pretty good. However, Prince Mo and Arbor had both arrived. Upon hearing the vassal king of Nan's disrespectful words to the Queen Dowager as soon as he entered, Arbor raised his brows and turned to look at Mo Lien, seemingly puzzled. He was in a hurry to return to the palace because such a big show was being staged in the palace today. As expected, the vassal king of Nan, this sly old fox, was good at scheming. He wanted to take down the Empress Dowager and the Great King in one fell swoop while the Crown Prince was leading his troops to resist the zombie army. This way, he could indeed coerce the Son of Heaven to order his vassals. Unfortunately, even though this plan was well thought out, it still had to be destroyed when he encountered the Crown Prince. At this time, the vassal king of Nan's gaze was slightly dazed, and he turned his neck stiffly to look at the smiling His Highness the Crown Prince. He kept feeling that when His Highness the Crown Prince smiled at him, there seemed to be a glint and shadow of a sword flashing past the depths of his eyes. Chapter 1523. A gloomy and eerie feeling. Terrifying. The depths of this man's eyes were ridiculously sharp. As an elderly prince who had been on the throne for a long time, he could be considered His Highness the Crown Prince's senior, yet he didn't dare to look him in the eye. The little stoic didn't have any other expression. The two of them rushed back from the city's north gate. When they passed by Kong Jianmen, they also saw Little Twelfth and the vassal prince, who were engaged in a lively fight. The unscrupulous couple only took a few more glances at Twelfth before they flew away with a wave of his hand in delight that the little stoic looked back. She probably wouldn't be able to forget Little Twelfth's expression even in a year. It was a bit similar to the expression of a small animal abandoned by its owner. His pair of watery eyes were about to shed tears on the spot. Arbor shook his small head. You must be very protective of your younger brother normally. Look at what you've taught him. Weakling. Wasn't it just fighting with 2,000 red scarf guards? And he actually cried from being beaten up. He really was too weak, all right. Mo Lien, what could he say? That punk, Mou, clearly didn't cry from being beaten up by the red scarf guards. Rather, it seemed like he cried from being angered by his unscrupulous brother and sister-in-law. However, Prince Mo didn't say anything. Since everything his wife said was correct, he nodded and affirmed his wife's opinion. Younger brother is seriously too weak, don't worry. I'll take this opportunity to have royal father order younger brother to go to the military camp to train for 1.5 years. That place can temper a person's character. In the future, younger brother will definitely become someone who can shoulder great responsibilities. Little Prince Mou, who was still fighting with the red scarf guards, suddenly coughed and rubbed his nose with a strange expression. Confusion. Who was it? Who was talking about him behind his back? Arbor glanced at Prince Mo and nodded. Very good. Speaking of which, our family's Xiao Sen has also grown up. How about we have him and Mou become partners? They can go to the military camp together to spend some time. It'll save them from being muddle-headed in the future. Brother-in-law can't help you. If your older sister wants to trick you, brother-in-law can only comply with your older sister's wishes. A certain son, who was studying in the school, suddenly felt cold. He shrunk his shoulders and heaved a sigh of relief. It must be an illusion. Seeing the young couple exchanging flirtatious glances with each other, the vassal king of Nan was infuriated and was just about to raise his hand. She then heard Prince Mo's apathetic voice say, "Vassal king of Nan, do you admit to absorbing private troops, transferring treasuries, and even dispatching private troops to secretly plunder some villages? Does it matter whether I recognize it or not?" The vassal king of Nan sneered. "It's not a big deal." Mo Lien nodded. Looking at his slightly raised hand, she mocked with a sneer, "Vassal king of Nan, from the moment this crown prince stepped through this door, it means that you've already lost. Do you understand?" Mo Kingdom's old great king, who was enveloped by the defensive barrier, immediately cried out in surprise and delight, "My king, hurry and apprehend this heartless and unscrupulous thing. To think that we treated him so well and have always respected him as a blood brother. In the end, he actually dared to take advantage of the zombies attacking the city to force us to abdicate. This is simply preposterous. Great king, sit down." Seeing her son jumping up and down, the great king's awe-inspiring demeanor was practically gone. The old queen dowager glared fiercely at him in dissatisfaction. The great king sat down listlessly. The vassal king of Nan sneered, "Your Highness the Crown Prince is too overconfident." Chapter 1524. Overconfident? Was that so? Mo Lien glanced at the old prince with a smile. However, the smile in this glance was mild and didn't reach the depths of his eyes. The little stoic pattered forward to the queen dowager. "Grandmother." The queen dowager hastily removed the defensive barrier and pulled her granddaughter-in-law inside. "Jojo, how's the situation outside? What about the zombie army?" "It's more or less taken care of." Arbor comforted, "Don't worry, those aren't problems." The great king couldn't help but sigh in relief when he heard this. At least those repulsive zombies didn't charge into the royal palace to wreak havoc. Otherwise, the consequences would be unthinkable. The old vassal king of Nan abruptly raised his hand with a cold expression. The two Mystic Realm experts who were on par with the queen dowager shot forward with a whoosh and grabbed without hesitation at the old vassal king of Nan. The two Mystic Realm experts instantly pressed down on the old prince's arms and firmly gripped the back of his neck as they kicked him to the ground. He knelt on the ground with a stupefied expression and stared straight at the little crown princess who was indifferently watching him. He bellowed in disbelief, "Cho Hu, Cho Bao, you actually dare to betray your master?" The two Mystic Realm experts disdainfully swept him a glance and smiled faintly. "Old prince, the two of us were originally His Highness the Crown Prince's men. It's you who was too blind. We've been hiding by your side for as long as 10 years, but you actually didn't know. TSK. Anyone would be angered to death by these words, all right? Not to mention the proud and arrogant old prince. He simply couldn't believe his ears. 10 years? 10 years, in other words, the scheming little crown prince had dispatched these two to his side when he was 10 years old? Ah! The old prince was about to explode from anger. You! The old prince turned around and saw a group of black-armored royal guardsmen emerging from the roofs in all directions under Hui Fan's lead. Sharp leech-like arrows whizzed toward the 3,000 red scarf guards without explanation. The old prince's lungs were about to explode from anger. How could this be? Actually, he and the vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, had come in two separate directions. The red scarf guards in his hands were 1,000 more than the 2,000 red scarf guards in Cho Fu's hands. However, these 3,000 red scarf guards were completely surrounded and had no room to fight back. After the first volley of arrows, the second volley of dragon saliva guards emerged from the rooftops, all holding firearms in their hands. The second round of attack was even more inhumane. The old lord could only stare at the rows of soldiers outside the door who had been killed by firearms with his scarlet eyes. These red scarf guards began to panic under the 2 rounds of extermination. They became more and more like a group of ants on a hot pan. They wanted to flee in all directions, but they were caught like turtles in a jar. The great king couldn't help but feel shocked. The large square outside the king's palace had already been bathed in blood. None of the 3,000 red scarf guards were spared. You. He watched as the private soldiers he had single-handedly nurtured were mercilessly slaughtered by the royal guardsmen and dragon saliva guards. The old prince spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. He pointed a trembling finger at the crown prince and stammered, You demon. You actually dared to make 3,000 soldiers bleed on the spot without even blinking your eyes. What do these human lives count for in your eyes? Ah. Chapter 1525. Mo Lien suddenly laughed and gazed at the old prince with an apathetic and icy gaze. Vassal king of an Anan, it's not like this is your first day knowing this crown prince. Is this your first time experiencing this crown prince's methods? You privately amassed 5,000 soldiers. In order to feed these private soldiers, you secretly dispatched people to plunder villages and killed more than 1,000 innocent people. You still have the face to talk about human lives with this crown prince? This crown prince thought you already knew the words life is worthless. The old prince plopped down on the ground and stared blankly at Prince Mo. Suddenly, he burst into maniacal laughter. You think you've won? Men, bring everyone from the vassal king of Nan's estate here. With the crown prince's command, earth-shattering cries immediately traveled over. More than 200 people from the vassal king of Nan's estate, masters, concubines, young misses, young masters, servants, and servants, were all pulled to the blood-soaked plaza. The great king, the queen dowager, the queen, and all the royal concubines followed Prince Mo out. They stood on the steps and looked at the group of people from the vassal king of Nan's estate kneeling before them. Mo Lien. You dare. The vassal king of Nan glared at the crown prince with wide eyes and tightly clenched fists. Kill. Mo Lien coldly threw down a word. Immediately, dragon saliva guard stepped forward and pulled out the old vassal king of Nan's concubines' sons and daughters from the crowd before ruthlessly tossing them to the ground. Ah! Cries and screams came from the mouths of those concubines' sons and daughters. None of them had their usual spoiled, willful, and lofty attitudes. At this moment, they had all become fish on the chopping board waiting to be slaughtered, struggling and thrashing. The dragon saliva guards slashed a few times, and several heads flew up, dyeing the old vassal king of Nan's eyes red. Mo Lien. The old vassal king of Nan bellowed. Schemer, this crown prince thought you were already prepared to have your entire clan exterminated. What are you crying and yelling for? Don't throw away your old vassal king of Nan's pride. Mo Lien coldly interrupted him. The crown prince gazed icily at the old vassal king of Nan as he sneered, the winner takes all, so you don't have to be unconvinced. If today, I, Mo Lien, was the one who lost, how many people do you think you will let go of? When he said this, the old king swallowed the words that were originally at the tip of his tongue. Right, if it wasn't for his son's foresight and early preparations, his group would have long fallen into the hands of the old vassal king of Nan. The consequence of being held hostage would definitely be to blackmail the crown prince. At that time, it would really be hard to say what the outcome would be. Zhao He, who originally felt a little sorry, tightly held her son in her arms. The crown prince was right. If they had fallen into the enemy's hands today, how could they have spared her son? They would not let Mo 16th off just because he was 3 years old. They would only kill him. If the rebellion succeeded, none of the old great king's sons and daughters would survive. Zhao He's gaze instantly turned icy. She sneered and said, scheming to rebel is a path of no return in the first place. Vassal king of Anan, are you still unwilling to surrender without a fight? Ha 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 ha. The old vassal king of Nan laughed arrogantly and suddenly stumbled up from the ground. Good. he suddenly turned to look at the old great king of Mo Kingdom. I didn't lose to you today, but to your son. Let's make up for yesterday's 2 chapters. Chapter 1526. This Prince Mo was truly formidable. Back then, when he was only 10 years old, he already knew to send people to infiltrate the old prince's side. It could be imagined that the crown prince had already set a trap for the old prince at that time. He was waiting for others to walk into the trap step by step. The old vassal king of Nan instantly felt that the situation was already hopeless before he even made a move. Wasn't it a little too frightening to fight with such an opponent? It was just like when you took your first step and suddenly turned around to discover that your opponent was already 100 steps ahead of you and had long reached the end. He was just standing there leisurely watching you, waiting for you to foolishly walk into the abyss. The great King Mo gazed at the old vassal king of Nan. He wanted to ask him why he was plotting rebellion, but in the end, he sighed and waved his hand. Imprison him first, then send the vassal king of Nan off with dignity. The Empress Dowager glanced at her son. Compared to this resolute grandson of hers, her son was much more soft-hearted. Although the vassal king of Nan's ancestors had rendered meritorious service to the country, the Empress Dowager couldn't tolerate him scheming against the Mo clan's power no matter what. For such a grave crime, there was no other choice but death. Perhaps the old vassal king of Nan had already thought of such an outcome before taking this step. Your Highness. The Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yushio hurriedly walked over and saluted. The great king's son led troops in from the back of Huashan Gate. He originally wanted to coordinate with the vassal prince of Nan from the inside, but he was forced to retreat by the 12th prince and fled to Grand Consort Shu's Chaoyang Palace. The great king's son charged into Chaoyang Palace and took control of over 100 people in Grand Consort's bedchamber. What? The great King Mo roared angrily. This unfilial son. This unfilial son. He actually dared to interfere? This fool, didn't he know that rashly leading troops into the palace had completely sealed off his last path of retreat? Royal Father, I request to see Royal Father. Second Prince Mo Lu's impatient voice came from afar. Mo Lu. The old great king frowned and waved away the guards blocking Mo Lu. Let him come over. Royal Father. The second prince was wearing a set of tattered armor, and behind him were more than a dozen soldiers who had fought a bloody battle and were covered in wounds. From the looks of it, His Highness seemed to have brought dozens of Mansion soldiers and fought all the way here to save the Emperor. His face was filled with unconcealable anxiety and panic. He hastily stepped forward and cupped his hands in greeting. Empress Dowager, Imperial Father, Imperial Mother, are you all right? When this child received the news that the vassal king of Nan had raised an army to rebel, this child hastily led men to escort you, but we were still a step too late. This child asks for Royal Father's forgiveness. The old great king nodded at him with relief. I'm fine. Your grandmother and the others are fine too. Mo Lu pretended to heave a sigh of relief, then hurriedly turned to the crown prince and cupped his hands, saying, Sixth brother has done meritorious service in protecting the emperor this time. If not for you, the consequences would simply be unimaginable. Mo Lien curled his lips at him as he remarked indifferently, it's actually all thanks to 12th brother this time. He managed to obstruct the vassal prince of Nan first. Ah, that's right, that's right. Mo Lu hurriedly smiled and nodded. Who knows what eldest brother wants to do after taking control of the Rising Sun Palace? Mo Lien's eyes were filled with coldness. Detain the vassal king of Nan and these people. We might as well move to the Rising Sun Palace. At the same time, the great king's son's estate. Shu Quan ordered her personal maidservant to close the door before turning around to fish out a medicine bottle from her sleeve. She steeled herself and poured medicine into her 3 children's mouthfuls before finally drinking a mouthful herself. Chapter 1527. By the time everyone rushed to Chaoyang Palace's entrance, they saw the great king leading several dozen startled shrimp soldiers and crab generals to kidnap Grand Consort Shu out of the palace. Grand Consort Shu's face was filled with terror, and tears streamed down her face when she saw the Empress Dowager and the others. Consort Cheng, Secondary Consort Wu, and Secondary Consort Zhang followed behind Grand Consort Shu. Each of them more or less had a trace of terror on their faces. Especially Consort Cheng. When she saw the great king Mo, she hastily knelt down and pleaded in a tearful voice, "Great king, Mo Jiao was instigated by someone to do such a foolish thing. Please spare his life, great king." The flock of orioles and swallows around Consort Cheng then started sobbing. The vassal king of Nan, who was forced to kneel at the side, couldn't help bursting into laughter when he heard this. "Consort Cheng, you're still begging them at this time? Do you think it's useful to beg like this? Today, even if this old man is on the road to the Yellow Springs, Consort Cheng and the great king can't be left out." Ha 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 ha. The young crown princess blinked and supported the Empress Dowager to stand at the side. She merely watched the huge commotion and didn't utter a word or express any opinion. The vassal king of Nan's wishful thinking was pretty good. He wanted to take advantage of the time when the crown prince gathered all the soldiers and headed to the city's north gate to resist the zombie army. He wanted to take control of Mo Kingdom's royal palace and use it to blackmail the crown prince. Unfortunately, this old fellow didn't know that the crown prince had been guarding against him since he was 10 years old. Prince Mo didn't kill important ministers who had rendered meritorious service to the country. The people that Crown Prince Mo killed were only traitors who were despised by everyone and hated by everyone. This point was very clear. This was also the source of the vassal king of Nan's resentment. He didn't expect that after living for several decades, he still couldn't see through things as thoroughly as a young fellow. What was laughable was that he obediently walked into the hole that others had dug and then buried himself. This kind of ending made the old king vomit blood. "Bring them all up," Prince Mo said coldly. Cries and shouts could be heard as 400 to 500 people were pushed forward and forced to kneel on the square. The old vassal king of Nan was startled. When he turned around to take a look, he shockingly discovered that apart from the 200+ people from the vassal king of Nan's estate, the people from the great king's son's estate had also all been escorted over. "Reporting to your highness, this subordinate has brought a group of people who escaped from the great king's residence 300 miles away from the outskirts of the city." The old vassal king of Nan couldn't help but smile wryly. Just like the great king's son, before he made his move, he had already sent his concubines' daughters and sons away from the vassal king of Nan's estate in order to preserve a bit of the bloodline of the vassal king of Nan's estate. But now, half of his pitiful children had been ordered to be killed by the crown prince. The rest of them were already trembling in fear and on the verge of fainting. "Why don't I see the great king's son consort?" the crown prince asked as he scanned everyone with a sharp gaze. The great king's son, who was currently holding Consort Dowager Shu hostage, couldn't help but be startled when he heard this, and he hooted at Yu Xiu and the others. "Were you the ones who killed my wife and children? Where did you take my wife and children?" This subordinate and the others found the princess consort and the 3 young masters and young misses in the great king's son's estate. "Impossible." The great king's son immediately refuted. "I personally sent my wife and children onto the carriage, so how could I not know? How could they still be in the estate?" Yu Xiu couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the hooting great king's son and waved his hand to have people move the corpses of Shu Quan and her 3 children over. Chapter 1528. When Consort Cheng saw that her 3 grandchildren's bodies had stiffened and their faces were deathly pale, she immediately fell to the ground and wailed bitterly, You killed my grandchildren? Ah! Great king, great king!" Consort Cheng scrambled to the great king's feet and tugged at the corner of his robe as she wailed miserably, "Great king, those are also your grandchildren. You're just going to watch them die for no reason and have no one to complain about the injustice you've suffered. And my daughter-in-law, such a good child, was disposed of by the crown prince's subordinates just like that. Ah! My heart is in so much pain." The great king couldn't bear it and turned to look at his son, looking like he wanted to say something but hesitated. This gaze didn't mean much to Mo Lien. The crown prince had known for 100 years that his father was easily swayed and unreliable, so this gaze couldn't sway him at all. However, it infuriated Arbor all of a sudden. "Shut up." Arbor abruptly interrupted Her Highness Consort Chang's screams and looked at her coldly, saying, "Poor Shu Quan, who was intelligent all her life, was in the same company as you fools. Who exactly killed her, doesn't Consort Ching know in her heart? Don't you feel ashamed to be this kind of pointlessly good person in front of the great king at this time? I don't usually see you dote on this daughter-in-law that much." The young crown princess suddenly took a few steps forward, and the guards who were originally standing beside Shu Quan subconsciously retreated upon seeing this. The young crown princess squatted down and rummaged through Shu Quan's sleeves. She took out a letter and threw it to Gong Chang'an, who was standing at the side. "Read it. Read it out loud. Read it for everyone to hear." Gong Chang'an's hand that was holding the letter trembled just like that, startled by the young crown princess's imposing manner. There was complete silence. Only the smell of blood spread through the crowd's noses. "Father, father, your daughter-in-law is small and powerless. I was unable to persuade the great king to rein in his horse at the edge of the cliff. I watched him step onto a path of no return. Your daughter-in-law's heart was filled with fear and unease. I know that I have committed a crime worthy of 10,000 deaths, and I don't dare to live in this world. Unfortunately, the 3 children are still so young, and I'm really worried about them. I have no choice but to." Everyone looked in shock at the great king's second consort Shu Quan lying beside the 3 children. According to what she said, could it be that the great king's second consort had committed suicide while hugging the children? No wonder he looked like he was poisoned. Impossible. Impossible. The great king's son, Mo Jiao, trembled all over and screamed in shock. "This is impossible. I clearly saw the 4 of them get on the carriage. How could he return to the great king's mansion and write such a suicide letter? It's you. You did it." The great king's son pointed at the young crown princess and then placed the saber across old consort Shu's neck. "Don't come over. If you dare to come over, I'll let her blood splatter on the spot. Archers, get ready." The crown prince's cold words not only stupefied the great king's son, but even the great king and the queen also turned to look at him. "Father, don't blame your son for being ruthless. This person must be captured at any cost." Prince Mo indifferently swept a glance at the old great king and slightly raised his hand. The archers lying in ambush on the eaves instantly drew their bows and waited to shoot. When the gazes of the people from the vassal king of Annan's estate and the eldest prince's estate landed on the archers moving in an orderly fashion on the eaves, their lips trembled, and they started crying in a panic. Chapter 1529. Great King, spare my life, Great King, spare my life. Great King, we weren't aware that the vassal king of Annan would actually lead troops to plot a rebellion. That's right, that's right. This servant is only a lowly watering servant in the great king's estate. This servant is innocent, woo-woo. For a moment, all sorts of cries and shouts intertwined, interrupting the great king's arrogant shouts. The great king's son was indeed stunned by the crown prince's actions. After staring blankly for a while, he angrily rebuked in a trembling voice, You actually don't even care about Consort Dowager Shu's safety?" As he spoke, he pressed his saber tightly against Consort Dowager Shu's neck, as if he wanted to confirm whether Mo Lien truly didn't care about Consort Dowager Shu anymore. He even drew out a small, bright, bloody mark on Consort Dowager Shu's neck. However, Mo Lien's gaze didn't change in the slightest. He merely sneered at the great king's son and spoke resolutely and callously. Consort Dowager was able to contribute to the Mo kingdom by putting herself in danger and cooperating with this crown prince to subdue you, this traitor, so her death was a worthy one. In the future, there will naturally be a place for her in my northern Mo royal mausoleum. Of course, royal father can also confer her the title of virtuous, 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 and virtuous Empress Dowager. Everyone. The Empress Dowager. As expected, this grandson of hers had a venomous mouth and a venomous person. He could actually speak so bluntly in front of Consort Dowager Shu. But by then, Consort Dowager Shu would already be dead, so what was the point of conferring a posthumous title? Cough. The Empress Dowager coughed lightly in a timely manner. Since Shu Quan has already committed suicide by ingesting poison and the 3 children are indeed innocent, then. At this time, Gong Chang had also read the letter to the end. In the letter, Shu Quan said that she had no other requests and only wished to be buried in a quiet place outside the palace with the 3 children. The Empress Dowager sighed. According to the ancestral rules, people who committed suicide indeed couldn't enter the royal mausoleum. Then, he would fulfill Shu Quan's wish of becoming a mother. She was also a pitiful child. She was originally so sensible, but she didn't expect that the ending would be so miserable. The Empress Dowager shook her head and then nodded. Then do as the great king's consort wishes. Find a few reliable people to do this properly. Let that child rest in peace. Yes, Empress Dowager. Gong Chang received the order. However, Prince Mo glanced at Shu Quan's direction with a slightly strange expression before thoughtfully withdrawing his gaze and conversing with Hui Feng in a low voice. After dismissing Hui Feng, the crown prince looked up at the great king's son, losing his last bit of patience. How long do you plan to keep up this act? Brother Wang, don't you know that your acting skills are really clumsy? Old concubine Shu and the great king's son were stunned. Even Consort Cheng and the others standing behind them were stunned. If you still don't surrender without a fight, this crown prince will give the order to execute you on the spot. Prince Mo raised his hand and made a pressing motion. Upon hearing this, the great king's son shuddered. Old concubine Shu sensed the great king's hand going limp and quickly pinched his waist. They were currently fighting for their lives. Yet this pig of a teammate was actually frightened by His Highness the Crown Prince and immediately wanted to reveal her true colors. However, this small action already allowed the Crown Prince to confirm that the 2 of them were indeed on the same side. Seize them. Old concubine Shu colluded with the vassal king of an Inan and the great king's son to plot against the great king. Her crime deserves 10,000 deaths. With the Crown Prince's command, the imperial guards swarmed toward them like a tide. Chapter 1530. Previously, because of Grand Concubine Shu, the soldiers were somewhat restrained. Now that they had captured Grand Concubine Shu as well, they naturally didn't need to care about their lives. Mo Jiao was personally subdued by Hui Feng and kicked to the ground. He raised his head and shouted at the crown prince, Mo Lien. You greedy bastard, quickly let me go. I'm royal father's eldest son. You can't treat me like this. Who do you think you are? Mo Lien. Everyone knows that you were merely adopted by the queen. You're not royal father's biological son at all. I'm royal father's biological eldest son. Shut up. The great king roared furiously. He hated hearing such words the most. After so many years, he had watched the little crown prince grow from a cute ball-sized child to such an outstanding youth. This was his biological son. No one could part with this father-son kinship between them. All of these people, including those bastards from the divine province's elder courtyard, all of them wanted to snatch his son. They were simply shameless. Second Prince Mo Lu's eyes flashed. He immediately stepped forward with his sword and chopped at the great king's head. Mo Jiao, you colluded with outsiders to force the emperor to abdicate and rebel, and now you dare to slander His Highness the Crown Prince. The facts are irrefutable, do you still want to deny it? Today, let me clean up the household on royal father's behalf. Ding! A streak of mystic energy swiftly bounced off the second prince's sword, causing it to deviate. Thus, the sword that was originally aimed at the great king's head chopped down on his shoulder. The great king's son roared and tried to get up, but several soldiers held his arms down tightly. He couldn't move no matter how hard he struggled. Second royal brother, you're quite impatient. Mo Lien's eyes were gloomy. She looked at the slightly embarrassed second prince and sneered, in any case, brother great king is our eldest brother. Even if we want to punish him, grandmother, royal father, and royal mother are present. It's not up to us brothers to do it. The second prince immediately smiled awkwardly. He nodded respectfully and retreated a few steps. The crown prince is right. It was I, royal brother, who overstepped. As he spoke, the 12th prince walked over in high spirits while escorting the vassal prince and the defeated soldiers in a purple and blue cloak with holes. When the old vassal king of Nan saw his son limping, he immediately wanted to pounce on him. He roared, Fu, Father. Cho Fu's son. He Chao's son staggered and Cho kneeled. When the old vassal king of Nan saw his son like this, tears involuntarily streamed down his face. He felt like a hero who had fallen from grace and was bullied by a dog. Royal father to royal father and royal mother. Grandmother, the 12th prince is back. The 12th prince immediately ran to his mother and grandmother to act cute. The queen-tess to Cho is. He Chao's and Cho. The king. The queen dowager couldn't help but sigh softly when she recalled what the crown prince said when he came to the longevity palace. Even if she was reluctant, the child had grown up, and the little northern moi couldn't keep him. Princess Anam Wuhongma was in tears. She was restrained by the soldiers and couldn't move to her son's side. She could only look on helplessly as her Cho, was trampled on the ground. She couldn't suppress the hatred in her heart, and she glared at Prince Mo. Chapter 1531. Since everyone is here, then let royal father speak. Prince Mo turned around and pulled the young crown princess to stand beside the great king of Mo, hinting with his eyes. Royal father? The great king of Mo took a deep breath and hesitated for a moment before saying, the vassal king of Nan has colluded with the great king's son, consort dowager Shu, and the Shu family to plot a rebellion. All of them are to be sent to the Supreme Court as prisoners. We will decide how to deal with them after discussing this with the Empress Dowager. Yes. Waves of weeping shook heaven and earth. Regardless of whether it was the servants picking vegetables or sprinkling water in the vassal king of Nan's estate or the great king's estate, they were all sent to the prison because they were implicated. Wu Hongma cursed loudly and almost fell to the ground after being shoved by someone. She turned around, wanting to see the crown prince and crown princess clearly. However, the crowd was too turbulent, and those two were standing high above, so how could a prisoner like her see them clearly? Her heart tightened, and tears uncontrollably welled up in her heart. She didn't expect that her and the old king's lifetime of planning would be completely ruined overnight. Should she blame herself for being incompetent, or should she blame the enemy for being too strong? Wu Hongma couldn't say for sure, but she felt sorry for her son. Soon, the several hundred people were all escorted away, and the farce of forcing the emperor to abdicate officially came to an end. The Empress Dowager looked a bit tired after being disturbed for so long, so Arbor supported her back to the Longevity Palace to rest. When the Crown Prince saw that his little wife had abandoned him to show filial piety to her grandmother, he immediately followed without another word. However, before leaving, he glanced at the old great king and said, "Royal father, you must not be soft-hearted to prevent a comeback." The old great king was silent for a long time. This matter was already very clear. The vassal king of Nan had probably given the great king some sort of guarantee, which was why the great king took such a risk and made such a bad move out of desperation. Old consort Shu and the Shu family were clearly standing on the side of the great king's son. They colluded with the vassal king of Nan's estate and played a pivotal role in this laughable rebellion. The old great king had been in an important position for a long time. He was just a little confused, but he wasn't really stupid. After understanding this, he sighed and left with Empress Zhao. It wasn't that he didn't understand his son's intentions, but he couldn't bear to order his eldest son to be executed by his own hands. Great King, Great King! Your Majesty! Concubine Sheng was half lying on the ground. She was so scared that her whole body was trembling. Great King, please show mercy. Great King, please show mercy and spare Mo Jiao. Mo Jiao is your son, the Great King, the Great King. Shut up. Empress Zhao paused and turned to look at her coldly. This unfilial son colluded with outsiders to plot a rebellion. Before he did this, did he ever think that the Great King was his biological father? Consort Sheng, the Great King and the Empress Dowager dismissed the matter of you instigating your son to covet the ink bamboo shoots with a smile. Who would have thought that you would go from bad to worse and actually want to plot a rebellion? What? Her Majesty the Queen had already reported the matter of the ink bamboo shoots to the Empress Dowager, but the Empress Dowager didn't order us to be punished. What Empress Dowager and the Great King meant was to let us off. Consort Cheng's eyes widened in astonishment. At this moment, regret welled up in her heart, and her heartache was almost indescribable. It was precisely because this matter was exposed that they hardened their hearts and ultimately agreed to the vassal king of Nan to step onto this path of rebellion with him. After all, the ink bamboo shoots were the best in the world, and only a small amount had ever been supplied to the royal family. Now that the Great King's son had diverted it to raise his private army, how could the Great King and the Empress Dowager let them off? Chapter 1532. She didn't expect that the Great King and the Empress Dowager didn't want to bicker with her and her son. Woo-woo. Consort Sheng covered her face and wept bitterly. She didn't expect anything. She should have thought of it long ago, right? The Empress Dowager and the Great King had always been benevolent people. If they hadn't committed the great crime of rebellion, they simply wouldn't have killed her and her son. It was already useless to regret now. Her stupidity harmed herself, her son, and even everyone in the Great King's estate. If she had listened to Shuchuan's advice back then and also persuaded the Great King's son to set aside the struggle for fame and fortune, then wouldn't everything be different now? Consort Sheng knew but didn't report it, so she's even more guilty. Guards, lock Consort Sheng up in the Supreme Court and await her punishment. After saying this, Empress Zhao supported the Great King and left first. The 12th prince was instantly dumbfounded. They had all left. Could it be that so many things had been left behind in this matter? Had been thrown to him? Why was his life so hard? He had to follow behind a group of people all day long and clean up their messes? Granddaughter-in-law, is grandmother getting old? The Empress Dowager suddenly lamented after walking for a while holding the young crown princess's hand. The young crown princess shook her head. Not old. The Empress Dowager couldn't help but turn around and smile at her. You silly child, who doesn't age? Grandmother is someone who wants to break through to the spiritual realm or even higher. She has a long lifespan, so she naturally won't age, the young crown princess said with a wink. On the side, Feng Gu couldn't help but laugh. Precisely, precisely. Your Majesty, the crown princess is extremely right. The Empress Dowager couldn't help but burst into laughter. You only know how to amuse grandmother. With grandmother's aptitude, reaching level 14 phenomenal success in this lifetime is already considered her limit. As soon as the Empress Dowager finished speaking, the young crown princess reached out and stuffed a talisman into her hands. Grandmother, there are 10 sets of mystic guiding talisman arrays in this storage talisman, which I gave to you. There are also many pills that I have labeled with their effects and usage methods. Grandmother, you can take a look at them before you consume them. After grandmother stabilizes her realm, she can take the level 14 mystic breakthrough pill. Who knows, maybe she will break through. Oh, didn't you say that the Yushio Villa is rich in profound energy? Then let's go to the Yushio Villa and go into seclusion. The Empress Dowager looked at her little granddaughter-in-law in confusion. She subconsciously dripped her blood to open the talisman under the guidance of the little crown princess. Then, she turned to the little crown princess in confusion. Granddaughter-in-law, you. The talisman arrays and elixirs here were simply an eye-opener for her. Could it be that the little granddaughter-in-law had given her all the pills that she had refined in her spare time? That's too much, child. You have to leave some for yourself. Refining pills was very time-consuming. His granddaughter-in-law had to cultivate and refine pills at the same time. Where would she find the time to refine so many pills? This was probably all she had to give him. Not much. I still have a lot for myself. Grandmother, I might have to leave for a while. The little crown princess supported the Empress Dowager's hand as they walked toward the Longevity Palace. You have to take good care of your body. When I return, if I see that grandmother has grown an extra strand of white hair, I will pluck it out for you. Fonggu burst into laughter and repeatedly nodded as she said, Crown Princess, don't worry. This servant will definitely look after Her Majesty the Empress Dowager and won't allow her to grow an extra strand of white hair. You child. The Empress Dowager glanced at Arbor with a gratified smile. Don't be fooled by this child's stoic face and icy demeanor toward others all day long. Her heart was very soft. Chapter 1533. Bang, bang, bang. Inside a remote woodshed in the vassal king of an Nan's estate, after someone knocked away a protruding stone slab, a figure covered in grime abruptly rolled out from within. Cough, cough, cough. Commandery Princess and flicked the dust in front of her with all her might as she coughed uncomfortably several times. She then turned to look at the sobbing Su-er. Cough, 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 Commandery Princess. Su-er hastily stepped forward to support Eaton. She exclaimed, Commandery Princess, are you all right? Are you hurt? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt. Commandery Princess Eaton angrily flicked away Su-er's hands as she declared angrily, simply outrageous. This damned Shofu actually dared to imprison this Commandery Princess in that kind of woodshed for a day and a night. I'm not done with him. In the middle of the night, that woodshed suddenly collapsed for some reason, burying Eaton for most of the night. It was only now that she finally crawled out from the pile of wood with great difficulty. This was simply an extraordinary humiliation. A dignified Commandery Princess was actually buried in the woodshed for a night. Abominable, abominable, abominable. Cho-fu, this damn man, not only did he have a bad character, but he also didn't even have the basic respect for his wife anymore. Just thinking about it made her furious. And angrily waved away the dust that drifted in front of her as she led Su-er toward the forecourt. Commandery Princess, we had better pack up and escape quickly. Escape for what? Could it be that I, the dignified Commandery Princess Eaton, would be afraid of the vassal prince of an Nan? Eaton rebuked angrily. No, Commandery Princess, right now, the vassal king of an Nan's estate. Eaton didn't have time to listen to Su-er's words as she arrived at the forecourt in a huff. Only then did she discover that the estate was empty. What's going on? Commandery Princess Eaton looked at Su-er in confusion. Where did everyone in this household go? A lot of people came last night and took away everyone in the vassal king of an Nan's estate. Su-er explained while wiping her tears, this servant also doesn't know what happened. This servant didn't even dare to run to the front to take a look. I only heard a huge commotion while hiding in the corner. Eaton had been locked up in a remote woodshed by Cho-fu, so she was unaware that she had avoided a calamity. As for Su-er, it really was all thanks to Commandery Princess Eaton. After she discovered that something was amiss while hiding at the base of the wall, she quickly ran over to the woodshed to hide. Fortunately, the woodshed was very remote. The soldiers who passed by only took a few glances and left immediately after discovering that it was a woodshed. Last night, the soldiers had focused their search on their master's backyard. They had practically dug up every brick and tile, and no one knew what they were looking for. Eaton was suspicious as she glanced at Su-er and suggested, how about you secretly go out and ask around? I will wait for you here. Su-er could only nod her head. As En sat in the quiet courtyard by herself, small goosebumps actually appeared on her small arms. She kept feeling the gloomy wind around her. Even sitting in the main hall made her feel uncomfortable. Furthermore, she lowered her head and looked at the small wound next to her navel. It had already been 3 days, but the wound still hadn't stopped bleeding. This made En feel like she had seen a ghost, and she started to feel anxious. After a few minutes, Su-er ran back in a fluster and said, "Commandery Princess, let's quickly pack up some valuables. We really have to escape." What exactly happened? When En saw her ghastly pale complexion, looking like she was about to faint, a bad premonition surfaced in her heart. Chapter 1534. After she came out, even her reliable personal maid, Ming Qian, had disappeared. It could be seen that something big must have happened at home. Commandery Princess, royal notices have been posted all over the streets. Last night, the vassal prince of Nan and vassal prince Cho Fu colluded with the Shu family and the great king's son in an attempt to rebel and force the abdication. They have been captured by His Highness the Crown Prince and His 12th Highness, and have all been imprisoned in the Supreme Judiciary. They are not to be visited without a royal edict. Commandery Princess Anne's eyes bulged. What? Then, what about me? The maid Su-er burst into tears. "Miss, you and I have both been put on the wanted list. Our arrest notices are all over the streets, saying that we, master and servant, have absconded in fear of punishment, adding to our crimes. If we resist during the arrest process, we will be killed without mercy." Smack! Commandery Princess Anne's legs gave out, and she fell heavily onto the stool. She shook her head repeatedly and said, No, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager wouldn't be so heartless. She definitely doesn't know about this matter. I want to enter the palace. I want to see the Queen Dowager. I want to see the Queen Dowager and tell her that I was completely unaware of this matter at the vassal king of Nan's estate. Commandery Princess, don't be silly. How could Her Majesty the Queen Dowager not know about these wanted posters being posted all over the streets? If she wanted to help you, she would have already had the wanted posters removed, right? Ah! Commandery Princess Anne slapped the table beside her forcefully. I am only a newlywed who has just married into the vassal king of Nan's estate for a few days. Why should I shoulder this blame? Why? Su-er said while wiping her tears, Miss, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's quickly return to our room and see if there's anything we can pack up. We will leave quickly after packing up. We can't stay in the Mo Kingdom capital any longer. We have to escape far away. No, I won't escape. Commandery Princess Anne declared furiously, I want to enter the palace. I want to see the Queen Dowager. I have to explain this matter to her clearly. I have been by the Queen Dowager's side for so many years, the Queen Dowager knows my character the best. Why should I be buried with those idiots from the vassal king of Nan's estate like a stray? I want to divorce the vassal prince of Nan. I have nothing to do with him at all. Su-er was both anxious and irritated. Your Highness. What else could he say? Don't forget, you are the legitimate vassal prince consort of Nan. Now, even the crown prince's 18 concubines have been thrown into prison by the great king, let alone you? The principal wife of the vassal prince of Nan. Besides, how are we going to find someone to refute this? The vassal king of Nan had indeed rebelled with his son. Now, the old vassal king and the old vassal consort's family of 3 were all in prison. As soon as you show your face, not to mention refuting, you will be arrested and executed on the spot. Anne collapsed onto the stool and cried in fury, What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? God, how dare you treat me like this? From beginning to end, I never wanted to be the vassal prince consort of Nan. Why is my life so bitter? Anne was still weeping endlessly, but Sue-er suddenly grabbed her arm and pulled her up from the stool. "Let's go, Your Highness. What are you crying for now? If you continue crying, there really won't be any more time." At this juncture of life and death, Ian was actually not as decisive as a little girl. The master and servant duo quickly ran back to their room, and they nearly fainted when they saw what happened. They were so infuriated that one Buddha ascended to the heavens and 2 Buddhas left their bodies. Chapter 1535. As it turned out, all of the rooms in the vassal king of Anand's estate had been swiftly ransacked, and the valuables had long been moved back to the royal storehouse. Right now, not even a single piece of clothing had been left behind for them. No wonder she kept hearing people going in and out in the middle of the night, rummaging through every master's court. So it turned out that they were searching for supplies buried underground. Looking at the room that had been ransacked, Ian couldn't resist covering her face and sobbing. This was truly intolerable. How could she continue living like this? What was she supposed to do when a delicate woman who had gotten used to living a life of luxury had to wander the pugilistic world like duckweed? She couldn't bear to live on when she thought of those terrifying days. On the side, Sue-er's eyes flickered, and she hastily pulled Ian towards the rear door of the vassal king's estate. "Commandery Princess, we can't stay here any longer. This place is not safe, and those people might come to search again. At that time, we really will have nowhere to run." Commandery Princess Ian wiped her tears as she caught up to Sue-er. She lamented, "Sue-er, we are penniless. What are we going to do in the future?" "It's fine, Commandery Princess. After we pawned our jewelry and clothes, we reckon that we can still last 3 to 4 months. At that time, this servant will find a job, and it will definitely not be a problem for us to survive," Sue-er said with a loyal and devoted expression. Ian was gratified. She didn't expect that Sue-er would still be willing to follow her in such dire straits. Sue-er took out a cloth bundle from her waist and said to Ian, "Commandery Princess, let's put in the precious jewelry and bright clothes." "That's right, miss, do you have any valuable magnetite on you? Let's exchange them for mystic currency as well. It will be easier to buy and sell things in the future. After we leave the vassal king of Anand's estate, please wait for this servant, Commandery Princess. This servant will go to the pawn shop to exchange for mystic currency before we continue." Commandery Princess Ian nodded. This was the only way now. She then took the bag of magnetite hanging from her waist and handed it to Sue-er. She then took off the hairpins and other valuable items on her head. Now that a calamity was imminent, she could only wait for the future and plan for the long term. However, the wound next to his navel was like a hidden danger. Why didn't it heal after so many days? Commandery Princess Ian took a deep breath before sneaking out of the vassal king of Anand's estate's back door with Sue-er. Fortunately, after such a major incident, no commoners dared to pass by the vicinity of the vassal king of Anand's estate. After all, everyone was in danger. Ordinary people were also worried. If they passed by the prince's mansion, they might be arrested as accomplices. The 2 of them took off their gorgeous clothes and purposely smeared some mud and dust on their white undergarments. They walked miserably toward the pawn shop stealthily. "Miss, wait for me here. I'll come out immediately after I pawn the items," Sue-er secretly instructed. Seeing that the road was filled with patrolling soldiers, Sue-er was worried and pulled her young miss into a small alley. She reached out to grab a tattered bamboo basket from the corner of the wall and wrapped it around Commandery Princess Ian's head. Sue had the Commandery Princess squat in the corner before instructing earnestly, "Miss, you mustn't come out. I'll come back to find you immediately after exchanging mystic currency. Don't worry, these jewelry and those magnetite that you gave me can probably be exchanged for 20,000 mystic currency. It's enough for Miss to spend for a while." Chapter 1536. Sue-er, hurry up. Come back quickly, don't make me wait too long. Su nodded vigorously before sprinting toward the pawn shop's entrance. And couldn't help but sigh in relief when she saw her nimble movements, carefully evading a row of patrolling soldiers, and successfully entering the pawn shop. Although the days were tough, they had to go on, right? Fortunately, Su treated her loyally. As long as she survived, she would have a chance to complain to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager in the future. Presumably, that elderly lady would forgive her on account of their past relationship. After all, she wasn't the one who wanted to rebel. She was just a newlywed who had just entered the vassal king of an Anan's estate, yet she was implicated by the old prince and his son for no reason. She truly was too innocent. She pondered as she waited for Su to come out of the pawn shop. However, as time passed, Commandery Princess Anne's legs were numb from squatting, but Su still hadn't returned. After less than an hour, the Commandery Princess, who was wearing a tattered bamboo basket on her head, finally sensed that something was amiss. She hastily lifted the tattered bamboo basket on her head and hid in a corner. She stealthily waited for the patrolling soldiers to pass by. Then, she found an opening and hastily ran to that pawn shop across the street. However, when she entered, she saw that Su was nowhere to be seen. And hastily walked up and asked anxiously, "Shopkeeper, did a delicate and pretty young lady come to pawn a bag of magnetite and gold and jade jewelry just now?" "Oh, you're talking about that young lady. She pawned 20,000 mystic currency and left long ago." "What?" As if struck by lightning, Anne's body swayed before collapsing limply on the ground. Su that damn lass, actually ran off with the money. Ah, the heavens were actually treating her like this. On the second floor of a tea house in the Mo Kingdom capital. She came out. "Young master, that dumb woman came out of the pawn shop." Haha, she actually only discovered a clue after such a long time. She really is dumb. Cult Master Ding, who was dressed in a gorgeous long robe, lazily leaned against the window. He glanced indifferently at Commandery Princess Anne, who was walking on the main street in a daze, and his lips curled up into a mocking smile. This servant thought that young master really didn't want Princess to return the 20,000 profound coins. "So you were waiting for it here." Bao Yan giggled and clapped her hands with a carefree expression. Previously, when young master had disguised himself as Xinu to get close to that Commandery Princess Anne, she had almost been disgusted to death. That Anne was two-faced. She clearly wasn't of much help to the young master, yet she dared to demand an exorbitant price, asking the young master to forgive her 20,000 yuan debt. She was simply crazy. Penniless, falling from the clouds to the bottom of the mud. "TSK, quite pitiful," Cult Master Ding murmured. His fingers pinched the white jade cup, and he raised his head to drink the wine. "Let's go." He stood up and brushed his sleeves. His lips curled into a cold smile. Bao Yan was right. Since it wasn't of any help to him, why should he benefit from it? Bao Yan simply did not know that her young master had transferred all of his anger from Prince Mo onto Commandery Princess Anne. That's right, that's what Cult Master Ding was thinking. This Anne didn't help him to the end. She had said that she would let him enter the palace, but before he could properly speak with Darling Qiao, that damn crown prince had rushed over. It was all this Anne's fault for not arranging everything properly. If it was her fault, then it was her fault. That's why she deserved this outcome. As for that loyal and devoted maid, Su Cult Master Ding's gaze was meaningful. He wished her good luck. Chapter 1537. Young master, don't disguise yourself as a lowly servant girl next time. It will only bury your identity. Bao Yan nagged as she followed him down the stairs. She was very disapproving of young master's disguise in order to get close to Commandery Princess Anne. It was fine if he had pretended to be Miss Xinu, since Miss Xinu's identity was still rather noble. But this time, in order to get close to Anne, young master actually pretended to be Su that lowly servant girl. This really disgusted Bao Yan to death. That damn servant girl, what right did she have to dare to make young master pretend to be her? Her death was not in vain. Bao Yan's eyes flickered. 2 hours ago, that servant girl, had hastily gone out to gather information under the commandery princess's urging. Just as she was about to squeeze into a small alley, Cult Master Ding, who had followed her, knocked her unconscious. Cult Master Ding squatted down with a grin and personally undid Su-er's outer garment. After a series of crackling bones shuttling back and forth, Ding Yun's body suddenly became as tall as Su-er, and his appearance also became identical to Su-er's. He unhurriedly put on Su-er's outer robe, buttoned it up, and tied his hair into the same bun as Su-er's. Only then did Cult Master Ding turn around with a smile and say to Bao Yan, who had a fuming expression, "All right, go to the tea house and wait for me. I'll come over when I'm done." "Young master, why go through so much trouble? We can just knock that commandery princess unconscious and rob her of all her valuables." Bao Yan scoffed. "In any case, that woman only has a very low cultivation. If we want to rob her, she can only obey obediently. What do you know? What's the point of doing this?" Cult Master Ding's gaze turned cold as he gave Bao Yan a warning look. "If you continue to point fingers, don't follow me anymore." Bao Yan quickly said, "Young master, I know my mistake." It was Bao Yan's slip of the tongue. Humph. Cult Master Ding creased his brows before suddenly chuckling. "This is what's called fun. Look, and originally thought that she wouldn't sink in the short term by grabbing onto the last Su-er. Who would have expected that her personal maidservant would pack up her bag and run away? Ayaya, just think of how spectacular Anne's expression would be at that time. In the future, I will have nothing. Hee hee." He really didn't know what kind of wicked taste this Cult Master Ding had. "All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Go to the tea house, I'll go meet Anne first." "Young master, what should we do with this girl?" "Let her be. When she wakes up, she can leave on her own. He's also a poor child." After the young master left, the girl Bao Yan lowered her head and glanced at Su, who was lying on the ground. A trace of disgust and anger appeared at the corner of her mouth. She hurriedly ran onto the street and blocked a patrolling guard. "Big brother, I saw a wanted criminal over there." Night fell. Prince Mo finished giving instructions to the 12th prince in the study. He looked at him and said, do you remember what Big Brother said?" With a pitiful expression, Mou glanced at the Crown Prince and said, "Big brother, you really have to leave?" The Crown Prince nodded. This matter could not be delayed any longer. He had originally wanted to hold out until he personally saw his little fellow climb the heavenly stairway, but from the looks of it now, it was clearly too late. These are the edicts of the Hidden Night Pavilion and the Dragon Saliva Guard. Keep them well." Mo Lien tossed 2 jade pendants into Mou's hand. Chapter 1538. Big brother, please reconsider. You're really not afraid that I'll squander away all the good things you've left in my hands? Mou gazed pitifully at his older brother with a mournful expression that said, "Please don't go." Prince Mo couldn't help but laugh and flicked his head. "Don't talk nonsense. Do you think I don't know how capable you are? Yu Xiu will lead 7 members of the Hidden Night Pavilion to escort Jojo to the middle 6 prefectures. The remaining people will be under your command from now on. Properly preserve the token and make good use of it. These resources in your hands will be your future reliance. Big brother, how about you bring me along with you?" Mou continued to plead. "When your cultivation reaches the 13th level and you comprehend the power of the 5 spirits, Big brother will bring you along." "Really?" Mou's eyes brightened. "Big brother, then it's a deal." Mo Lien couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. After exhorting a few more words, she then said to him seriously, did you have any comprehension from leading the army this time?" Mou nodded and said, the vassal prince of an Anan is an expert at commanding troops. If it weren't for Yu Xiao and Huifan helping me afterward, the vassal prince might have escaped. Don't worry, big brother. You, will definitely properly learn from General Shi during this trip to the barracks. Mo Lian nodded with gratification in her eyes. You will follow General Shi to the border to guard the border this time. Second young master Shi will also accompany you. Although second young master is sickly and frail, he has his own unique points in commanding troops and arranging formations. You must not be ashamed to ask for guidance, understand? Emin, big brother, you, will. Holding his younger brother's hand, Crown Prince Mo sat down beside the table with him. You, after eldest brother leaves, you have to visit royal mother frequently. You mustn't be like before, running away everywhere like a wild monkey and worrying royal mother deeply. Got it, big brother. Mou's eyes reddened, and he suddenly hugged Prince Mo. Big brother, you must remember to come back. Truly a silly child. Big brother is only leaving home for a period of time. I'll come back no matter what in 3 to 5 years. What are you crying for? A man bleeds, not tears. Her Majesty the Queen has arrived. Mou hurriedly got up and wiped the corners of her eyes. Imperial Mother must have a lot to say to you. I'll leave first. He was worried that if he continued to stay here, he would be like his mother, hugging his big brother and crying. If that happened, where would he put his little face? Mo Lian stood up to welcome her and led Queen Zhao to the small table to sit down. Empress Zhao dismissed the servants. As soon as she saw her son, her tears fell uncontrollably. Mo Lian hurriedly stepped forward and obediently knelt in front of his mother. He softly comforted her, Imperial Mother, your son will only be away from home for a period of time. It's not like I won't be coming back. Don't be sad, okay? Empress Zhao wailed, my child, Imperial Mother knew that this day would come. When your father told me this morning, I couldn't believe my ears. It turns out that the elders of the divine land had found you long ago. Why didn't you tell me anything? It's just a small matter. There's no need to bother me. Imperial Mother, I promise you that I'll come back in at most 5 years, at least 3 years, okay? Empress Zhao choked with sobs. My child, do you know that although you're not my biological child, I watched you grow up little by little. From Tuanzi's age, you grew up to be such an excellent young man. I've engraved my child in my bones and blood. Mother and son are connected by heart. If you leave now, you're gouging out my heart. Chapter 1539. The Crown Prince walked up to Empress Zhao on his knees and held her hand as he said softly, Mom, I promise you that no matter how many difficulties and obstacles await me in the future, I will always remember you. I will always remember that father and mother are waiting for me at home. I will definitely come back with my wife. Empress Zhao hugged her son and bawled loudly. Mom was muddle-headed. Mom didn't like your wife at the start. I always felt that she was cold and heartless and didn't even smile at her elders. How could Mom be so muddle-headed as to fancy a woman like and who has a Buddha's mouth but a snake's heart? It wasn't until that day at Yiting Court that Mom realized that your wife, that girl, is actually a good child even though she is cold on the outside and not good with words. What was the use of Anne's glib tongue to amuse her? When danger came, it was still that little stoic daughter-in-law of hers who saved her. The little stoic was just a person of few words. Rather than bickering, the little stoic used practical actions to express herself. This was the difference. One was gaudy and unrealistic, while the other was practical and kind-hearted. Empress Zhao was only regretting that she didn't build a good relationship with her youngest daughter-in-law from the start. Now that her daughter-in-law was about to leave, she didn't have a chance to get along well with her. She couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of this. Jojo, this child, is also leaving in a few days. Mom doesn't feel good about not being able to get along with her. Mom, don't be sad. No matter where we go, you are Jojo's and my greatest concern. Besides, Jojo won't be leaving for a few days. Mom will bring Jojo around these few days. Mom, I'm telling you, it's the easiest if you don't want to see Jojo's stoic face. You just have to tell her, daughter-in-law, since you're about to leave, just smile for Mom. She'll definitely smile. Empress Zhao glanced at her son and pointed at his forehead with a smile through her tears. You're always teasing your mom. While the mother and son were chatting, Xiaomu also made 3 consecutive promises in front of her parents. She promised to return home within 3 years, she promised to send a message back within half a year, and she also promised that she absolutely wouldn't get hurt. Wei Ziqin asked Xiao Zhongbang to open the ancestral hall, and the couple brought Arbor to Long Chuyan. Child, you have to keep the jade pendant that mother gave you. That's the symbol of the Mu family's status. Xiao Mu pursed her lips non-committally, but she did not refute. She would never take the initiative to get in touch with the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture. These so-called relatives, hee. Hey, mother doesn't care what you think in your heart. In short, promise mother that you must not be angry with your biological mother, okay? Mother, I'm not angry at her. Then why didn't you take the initiative to visit her these days? Wei Ziqin glanced at her daughter's stubborn side profile and suddenly reached out to pull her into her arms. Mother knows that you're upset, but mother wants you to face it, okay? Arbor nodded. Mother, what happened to Long Chuyan? Why was I implicated by her? I'll face all these and find out the truth. Mother, don't worry, those people from the Mu family can't hurt me anymore. Because before they hurt her, she would let them die. Wei Ziqin's heart trembled, and she and her husband Xiao Zhongbang looked at each other. The couple was baffled, and a bad premonition emerged in their hearts. Why did their daughter have such a murderous look when she talked about the Mu family? Was this okay? Chapter 1540. 976. Arbor didn't know if she was good or not, but she didn't have a good impression of the Mu family. How she would treat them in the future would depend on how they treated her. Moreover, she was bound to meet Shantian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gung Pengcheng, on this trip to the middle 6 prefectures. At that time, it would be clear who was the god and who was the ghost. At the end of the quiet hill, Arbor stood there with Haitang. Arbor didn't move, and her gaze fell on Haitang, who was digging the soil. After digging deeply, Haitang quickly dug out the coffin of the great king's consort. She turned to Arbor and said, "This isn't good, Crown Princess." Of course, digging a grave wasn't good, but it depended on whose grave she was digging. "Open it." Arbor glanced indifferently at Haitang. This child was a blockhead. She didn't talk much, and every time she spoke, she would be in a daze. No matter how much she disapproved of her master, she would obediently complete the task. Haitang cupped her hands 3 times at the coffin before opening it. She was very fast. With a light pat on the coffin lid, the nails on the coffin lid flew up and bounced to the side. The coffin lid opened, revealing 1 adult and 3 children. 4 pale faces were revealed. If normal people saw this, they would probably be greatly shocked and scared half to death. However, Xiao Mu's expression did not change in the slightest, without the slightest ripple. Haitang picked up a sword and was about to stab it into the coffin. Arbor couldn't help but twitch her mouth. "Stop, what are you doing?" Haitang turned to look at her blankly, her little face full of confusion. "Crown Princess, didn't you dig up the grave of the great king's consort to kill the corpses and whip them out?" Arbor. "I have no grudges with them, why would I do that?" Xiao Mu gazed at Haitang exasperatedly. "Moreover, even if you have enmity and grudges, you can just take revenge when you're still alive. Why do you have to compete with a corpse? Boring." The little crown princess naturally had her pride. As she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes flashed slightly. She wondered if Yi-an was doing well. The little crown princess's lips curled into a sneer. He dared to show off his culinary skills in front of her to please the queen, and even dared to insult her to her face. Naturally, he had to pay the price. He wondered if she had been feeling unwell recently after eating the pastries with added ingredients. The funniest thing was that the summer seed that and had placed inside the jasper begonia to trick the Queen Dowager had been turned into medicinal powder and given to Commandery Princess and to eat. This kind of poisonous powder had a very strange use. Once a person's body was injured, the wound would never heal. If it wasn't detoxified within half a month, the wound would fester and spread until there was no blood left. Poison. Poison is right. Didn't they know that she would get angry if they kept coveting her men? Haitang blinked. Then Crown Princess, why exactly are you digging up graves? The little Crown Princess walked up and squatted down in front of the great king's consort. She pried open her lips and poured down 2 mouthfuls of the medicinal liquid. She then poked her throat with 2 fingers, and that medicinal liquid slowly trickled down. Haitang looked at her little Crown Princess in shock. She wouldn't be so bored as to ask the Crown Princess if she wanted to poison the great king's consort again. The Crown Princess wouldn't be so bored. The little Crown Princess definitely had her reasons for doing this. However, she didn't know what the Crown Princess meant by this. Cough, cough, cough. Chapter 1541. 977. Looking at the great king's princess consort who suddenly choked and coughed while struggling to sit up, Haitang was even more fearful. Even though Haitang was skilled and daring, she couldn't help but be shocked by the scene before her. Not good, the great king's princess consort has turned into a corpse. Haitang held her sword and blocked in front of the crown princess. Didn't I say it couldn't be buried? Look at how fierce it is. The moment the coffin is opened, the corpse will rise. In today's world, everyone was used to cremating corpses to prevent the corpse from mutating and coming out to harm people again. Ta, crown princess. The great king's princess consort coughed and called out softly. Heavens, the great king's princess consort could actually still speak. What was going on? Could it be that the great king's princess consort wasn't dead at all? Haitang looked at the little crown princess in shock, only to see her pouring that bottle of medicinal liquid into the mouth of the 3 children. Very quickly, the 3 children also woke up one after another and timidly nestled beside Shu Quan, their faces filled with fear. Don't be afraid. Shu Quan hugged the 3 children and comforted them as she hurriedly got up to bow to Arbor. No need to be so courteous. Arbor waved her hand and excused Shu Quan from bowing. Haitang muttered at the side, Crown Princess, so the bottle of medicine you gave to the great king's princess consort that day was a fake bottle of poison. Ah. What fake? It's genuine, it's throat-sealing poison. Could a fake one deceive so many imperial physicians? The poison was naturally real, but she also had a way to bring someone back to life within 2 days. Xiao Mu swept this dull-witted fellow a glance. She was also present that day and saw her hand a bottle of poison to Shu Quan with her own eyes. At that time, this lass even asked her with a straight face why she helped Shu Quan. The little crown princess thought that this silly lass had completely understood her intentions, but she didn't expect that. Hehe. Was it really a good idea to keep such a strange child by his side? This servant thought that you didn't want the eldest prince consort and her child to suffer the pain of being imprisoned. That was why you agreed to help at the beginning and gave them a bottle of poison so that they could die quickly. After that, when she learned that the great king's son was also involved in the conspiracy, the crown princess became angrier and angrier. She immediately wanted to dig up a grave and whip the corpse to vent her anger on the great king's son. Haitang scratched her head. Arbor was speechless. This guy's way of thinking seemed to be different from others. Is it really a good thing for you to imagine your own master like this? That was why she was holding the sword and preparing to chop the corpse with a serious face. She really thought that her master wanted to go back on her words and whip the corpse. I didn't think that the crown princess would really save them. Haitang said blankly. Actually, when the great king's son's consort came to find her master that day, she didn't understand the situation at all. The 2 masters spoke without rhyme or reason, so she stood at the side and only watched and listened without saying anything. When she saw the crown princess give the great king's son's consort a bottle of medicine and the great king's son's consort thanked her with tears in her eyes, she imagined the plot. What was wrong with that? All right, turn around. Master didn't want to talk to a fellow like you who imagined too much. Haitang obediently turned around and faced Arbor with the back of her head. Master, when you leave, call this subordinate Arbor. Did the crown prince throw such a silly person to her side just to be funny? The great king's son's consort pulled the three children up and lowered her head slightly with tears in her eyes. Thank you, crown princess, for your help. Chapter 1542. Shu Quan has nothing else to ask for in this life. Today, I will lead the three children far away from the Mo kingdom capital and go to the mountains and countryside to spend the rest of my life there. The great king's consort held the three children and bowed toward Arbor again. Shu Quan definitely won't cause trouble for the crown princess, please be at ease. Arbor nodded and handed her a bag of mystic currency. Take the things in the coffin with you. Take good care of the children in the future and don't return to the capital by any means. Yes. Arbor nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. He turned around and called for Haitang to leave together. Shu Quan tightly embraced the three children and gratefully glanced at Xiao Mu's back a few more times. She had one son and two daughters of her first wife. The oldest daughter was no more than 10 years old, and the youngest daughter was only 7 years old. They were at the age of flower buds, so she naturally couldn't let them lose their lives innocently because of the great king's consort's stupidity. Cheng, let's go. Shu Quan tugged at her 8-year-old son's arm. The boy clenched his fists and suddenly flung her hand away. He roared at Shu Quan, Mother, where are you taking us? Why do we have to run away? Don't ask too much. Shu Quan covered her son's noisy mouth and held back her tears. Child, from now on, us four mother and son will depend on each other for survival. Our days won't necessarily be worse than before. How can our days be better than before? Although Mo Cheng was young, he was very astute. Mother, everything you said before was a lie, right? Father didn't oppose at all, right? Wrong. Your father colluded with the vassal king of Nan and the Shu family to force an abdication and rebel. This is an established fact. An icy voice suddenly came from behind the tree. Royal father has already decreed that the vassal king of Nan and his vassal prince instigated a rebellion and stripped him of his title as the vassal king of Nan. As for brother great king and the entire Shu estate, all the direct descendants and collateral branches will be implicated. Although the servants can be spared the death penalty, they will be exiled to the western wilderness. These are all crimes committed by the vassal king of Nan colluding with the great king's son. The cold voice was heard clearly again. Shu Quan's entire body trembled, and she turned her head to look in horror. The crown prince was wearing an ink-colored imperial robe. He wore a fan-shaped jade pendant under a sky-blue dragon-patterned belt around his waist. His jet-black hair stood on end like a waterfall. Just by standing there, he exuded an endless pressure, making it hard for others to raise their heads and look at him directly. Shu Quan was extremely flustered. She hurriedly reached out to grab the three children and said to them, quickly greet your Uncle Wang. The two little princesses hurriedly knelt down and saluted. However, the son of the great king's first wife, Mo Cheng, had an unyielding appearance despite his young age. He raised his head and pursed his lips, stubbornly standing with his back straight and unmoving. I don't bow to my enemies. Shu Quan was both anxious and angry. She was anxious because her son didn't know the severity of his words. She was angry because Consort Cheng raised her youngest son by her side and taught him to have such an arrogant temperament. At the juncture of life and death, he still dared to be so stupid. He was simply foolish beyond compare. Eldest sister-in-law, you're a smart person. This woman actually knew to seek help from the crown princess early in the morning. who would normally not interact with the crown princess much, know that this little fellow was actually a cold-faced but warm-hearted person who attached great importance to her promises. Normal people would most likely beat a retreat when they saw the little crown princess' cold face. Yet Shu Quan knew to take a risk out of desperation. Chapter 1543. She had staked everything on the little fellow, and as expected, she succeeded. This wife of the great king's son was overly intelligent, which made people uneasy. This kind of person who knew how to lay low and conceal herself would ultimately be a disaster if left alive. Shu Quan had been paying attention to the crown prince's every move, and when she saw his eyes suddenly turn cold and slightly raise his hand, her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. "No, Your Highness. Please, please be magnanimous and show mercy. Let my children live. They are innocent, Your Highness. There are no innocents under the royal authority." Mo Lien coldly said, "Winners are kings and losers are bandits. The great king's brother lost, so he has to pay the price. Letting the tiger return to the mountain would only invite fire to burn oneself." He had never been a kind-hearted person. Especially this 8-year-old child in front of him, whose eyes were currently leaping with flames of hatred. How could he let it go? Once the seed of hatred was buried deep in one's heart, it would eventually grow into a towering tree one day. Once it was instigated and used by someone with ulterior motives, the consequences would be unthinkable. Before he left this star field, he had to pave a smooth path for his 12th brother. Anything that could become his stumbling block, he would eliminate it without hesitation. Don't say that he was ruthless, it was just that their standpoints were different. Suddenly, Shu Quan picked up a thick tree branch from the ground, and under everyone's unexpected gazes, she ruthlessly struck at her own son. She grabbed Mo Cheng and abruptly smashed his knee a few times, until that child's left knee fractured and fainted from the pain. "Your Highness, please show mercy. Shu Quan can take these children and personally write an oath binding the heavenly law. In the future, they will definitely not become a tool for someone with ulterior motives. I will also properly teach Cheng, and absolutely won't let him repeat the mistakes of his past and follow in his father's footsteps, coveting things that he shouldn't covet." Shu Quan's hair was disheveled and her entire body was soaked. She heavily knocked her head on the ground, and a bulging mystic coin pouch fell from her chest with a bang. The crown prince's gaze fell on that brocade pouch embroidered with an ugly lotus flower, and his gaze softened. Ever since the little guy learned how to embroider lotus flowers, he liked to embroider lotus flowers on his sleeves, neck, pockets, and even socks. The crown prince gazed deeply at Shu Quan, then his gaze fell on Mo Cheng's left leg without any warmth. Shu Quan was very smart. It seemed that the child's leg could not be cured in the future. As a cripple, it was naturally impossible for him to reach the top and sit on the throne. He had lost the value of being used by others, so naturally, it was impossible for him to be targeted by people with ulterior motives. Shu Quan was trying to make him feel at ease. The crown prince glanced at her indifferently and nodded. "I hope you'll take care of yourself." Hui Feng led a dozen or so people behind the crown prince, and when they heard this, they couldn't help but be startled and look up at their crown prince. However, the crown prince had already turned around to leave. Hui Feng and the others exchanged glances before quickly following after him. "Your Highness, are you going to let the great king's son off just like that?" Mo Lien nodded with an indifferent expression. Thinking of the bulging profound coin pouch embroidered with lotus flowers, she sighed and muttered to herself, it's better not to disappoint her. If his stoic-faced darling wanted to save someone, then she would save him. "But Your Highness." Mo Lien abruptly turned to glance at Hui Feng. "When Mo Cheng comes of age, kill him without mercy if he makes any strange movements." Shu Quan, Shu Quan, you mustn't disappoint my darling. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. A harsh glint flitted through the crown prince's eyes for a fleeting moment. Chapter 1544. Paula, after a crisp sound, a perfectly good tea set was swept to the ground, turning into broken porcelain pieces. Your Highness. A person who looked like a shopkeeper stood in front of Mo Lu, trembling with fear and trepidation, and his voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. The properties under our name have been forcefully destroyed or seized by a mysterious force one after another. Now, we don't have much income every day. If this continues, I'm afraid that we won't last half a month before. We won't be able to make ends meet. Despicable. Mo Lu slapped the table and cursed, if I find out who's doing this behind our backs, I definitely won't let them off. Oh. You really don't know who's targeting you? A cold and desolate voice immediately drifted in from outside the window. Mo Lu's entire body stiffened. This voice was like a nightmare, so he naturally couldn't forget it. Mo Lu retracted the horrified expression on his face and hastily greeted with a smile. Mo Lu didn't know that Your Highness the Crown Prince was gracing us with his presence. Please excuse me for not going out to meet you. Prince Mo stepped into the study with a smile and shot a glance at the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper immediately sensibly retreated several steps and bowed in salute. Your Highness the Crown Prince, second prince, this humble one will take his leave first. The second prince only felt his back drenched in cold sweat. How could he be in the mood to pay attention to a shopkeeper's words? After nodding absent-mindedly, the shopkeeper also felt his entire body abruptly turn cold, and he hastily jogged out the door. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief, as if he had escaped from the gates of hell. Take it for second royal brother to look over, the crown prince said coldly. Huifeng quickly stepped forward and unfolded an oath, flattening it before placing it in front of Mo Lu. When Mo Lu saw it, he couldn't help but tremble in anger. Crown Prince, what do you mean by this? Second royal brother doesn't even understand this? This oath clearly stated that Mo Lu must not covet Northern Mo's right to inherit the throne for the rest of his life and was willing to be an idle prince. I'm doing this for royal brother's sake. Mo Lien said indifferently, rather than having unrealistic thoughts like brother great king, why don't this crown prince give it to you and completely sever this thought, ensuring your safety for the rest of your life? You. Mo Lu's face twisted as he laughed awkwardly. Crown Prince, you must be joking. Mo Lu has never had such disrespectful thoughts. Northern Mo naturally only has one crown prince, and that is you. Mo Lien coldly glanced at him. I made a deal with the Rakshasa ghost sect master. The one who wants to buy this prince's life is actually you, right? Mo Lu immediately broke out in a cold sweat like a waterfall. He really didn't expect the crown prince to be so blunt. When this crown prince was trapped in Bailon City and was tragically attacked by tens of thousands of corpses, brother great king, that fool, jumped out first, causing royal father to mistakenly believe that he was the one who did it. Actually, second imperial brother is the one who hides the deepest. Mo Lien smiled at him and said, otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to secretly nurture Wei Something Li for so long just to have her hide by my side. TSK, you're so shrewd that it makes me shudder. This crown prince has the evidence of you bribing the Rakshasa ghost sect to assassinate me. The crown prince's expression was indifferent as his gaze landed on that piece of paper. See if you want to sign this oath. If you sign it, the grudges between us will be written off. And if you don't sign it? The crown prince curled his lips. Chapter 1545. At this time tomorrow, the great king will have a complete set of evidence of second royal brother hiring someone to murder younger brother in front of him. Second Prince Mo Lu's entire body trembled, and he hastily stepped forward to pick up his brush. With a swish, he signed his name on the oath and stamped his blood seal. Very good. The crown prince nodded and took the oath to put it away. He coldly glanced at Mo Lu. After this, 12th brother will go to the military camp to gain experience for a while. I hope that you will think carefully before you make any moves. The so-called restrictions of heavenly law aren't just empty words to scare people. Even this crown prince can't do anything about heavenly law, let alone Ants like you. After saying this, the Crown Prince led Huifeng out of Second Prince Mo Lu's study without looking back. When he stepped out of the door, his footsteps paused, but he didn't turn back. He merely coldly said, "I'm letting you off for royal father's sake. You should be thankful that you have a loving father." Prince Mo coldly tossed this sentence before walking out the door. The old great king was already pitiful enough after sending away his eldest son. If he also lost his second son, his body probably wouldn't be able to bear it. He was purely thinking for royal father, otherwise. Mo Lien stepped out of the second prince's study and looked up at the horizon. She sighed softly in her heart, it's time to bid farewell to Jojo. Inside the main hall of the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate, Qiao Zhongbang glared at his youngest daughter, Qiao Lin, who was dressed in men's clothing and energetically jumped out. He fumed with rage and glared at her. "What are you doing? Hurry and change out of these nondescript clothes you're wearing." "Father, I already told sister. Starting tomorrow, I'll go to the military camp with younger brother to gain experience. If I want to embark on the path of the strong, I must learn to be independent and strong. Of course, the most important thing is still to take care of Xiao Sr." Xiao Sun changed into a spirited riding outfit and made a face at Xiao Lin. "It's not certain who's going to take care of who." The little monk bit on a small handkerchief and looked pitifully at Arbor as he sniffled. Arbor hugged little Baldy and comforted him. "Hey," before the old monk left, "he told me that he would come back to pick you up in 3 years. After the new year, let's count it as 1 year. Now, there are only 2 years left. The old monk will definitely come to find you." The little monk was sobbing. Arbor looked down at him and touched his little bald head. "Don't cry. I promise you that I'll be back within 3 years. The journey to the 6 prefectures continent will be difficult and dangerous. I can't bring you along. You stay at home, study hard, and cultivate diligently. I guarantee that you will see me soon." The little monk sobbed for a while and nodded his head pitifully. Wei Ziqin's eyes also reddened. All the children had to leave home. Xiao Sun was still so young, and Xiao Lin, was just a child. She didn't know if they could take good care of themselves. "Mother, a baby eagle must spread its wings and fly high in order to grow into a male eagle in the future. Don't worry, I'll take good care of younger brother along the way." The Crown Prince heard this the moment he entered the room. He looked at Xiao Lin's youthful attire and couldn't help but smile. "Mother, you really don't have to worry. Although Xiao Sun is going to the military camp to gain experience, I've arranged for people to take care of him along the way. And he'll be accompanying you, on this trip." The Crown Prince glanced at Xiao Lin halfway through his sentence. "Xiao Lin, have you really decided? Broken dreams." Chapter 1546. It wasn't a joke for women to enter the military camp, and there were many inconveniences involved. Of course, Xiao Lin's abilities naturally weren't weak. At the age of 11 or 12, she was about to break through to become a level 8 mystic cultivator. These two sisters were both monstrous figures. Xiao Lin raised her small head. Brother-in-law, sister has already agreed." Darling Xiao had already agreed, so the Crown Prince naturally had no objections. The Crown Prince summoned Huifeng and had him give the oath to Mo Shi for safekeeping. After exchanging a few words with Qiao Zhongbang, Wei Ziqin, and the others, they had dinner before bidding farewell to everyone and returning to the palace. The entire journey, the little fellow sat in the carriage sullenly and didn't utter a word. When the Crown Prince saw this, he couldn't help but chuckle as he reached out to rub her head. "Didn't we agree? Jojo can't not be happy. I'll definitely go to Shuntian Prefecture to find you within 5 months. I won't go back on my word." Arbor nudged to his side and tilted her head to glance at him. "You're leaving today?" The Crown Prince nodded. "Right away. Then you won't be able to watch me climb the celestial stairway." "Unhappy." Normally, when this person appeared in front of her all day long, she truly didn't think much of it. But now, knowing that he was about to leave, she didn't feel good in her heart. It was as if she was empty, as if something was missing. She just wasn't happy. The Crown Prince reached out to tuck a strand of hair from her forehead behind her head. He cupped her small face and leaned close to her, gently and slowly planting a kiss on her lips. "Jojo, take good care of yourself. Let me be at ease, okay?" Arbor snuggled into his embrace and reached out to hug his waist with a pair of small paws. "You also have to promise me to stay away from danger. You can't let yourself get hurt, and you can't take risks to save time." Upon hearing this, Mo Lien nodded and simply reached out to carry her onto his lap. Wrapping his arms around her body, he rested his head next to her neck and rubbed it. He sighed softly and said, "What to do, what to do? I haven't left yet, but I already miss you so much. How about, you put me in a storage talisman and bring me along?" Darling Xiao Lin's eyes lit up as she turned to look at him. Prince Mo glanced at the little fellow's serious expression and couldn't help but chuckle. This little thing had an expression that said, "You can put me in your pocket and take me away." It was so cute. "I can't hide it from the Heavenly Tao. If the Heavenly Tao finds out that I brought a helper, do you think it will punish me even more severely?" Liar. Arbor puffed up his cheeks and glanced at him. "You just won't take me." The Crown Prince hugged her helplessly and comforted her gently, "I don't want to bring you there. There are too many unknowns. I can't risk you." "I can't bear to," the Crown Prince murmured, his arms tightening. "Jojo, you have to be good." The carriage entered the Eastern Palace, and the two got off hand in hand. Taking advantage of the moonlight, they strolled slowly on the colorful stone path. The two of them held hands, their shadows entwined under the moonlight. After strolling around the Eastern Palace's little garden, Miss Xiao did not feel like resting and asked him to accompany her for another 2 rounds. "Are you tired? How about I carry you on my back?" Arbor thought it was a good idea. Lying on top of him, she nuzzled her head next to his neck and said in a muffled voice, "Hubby, let's not leave today, okay?" "Okay, we'll leave tomorrow morning. I'll stay with you tonight." Mo Lien softly responded. "If you're tired, then sleep." No. If she woke up, this person would not be by her side. Chapter 1547. Arbor snuggled against his neck and exhaled. "What if you don't come to Shantian Manor on time to find me?" "I won't." Mo Lien looked certain as she tilted her head slightly to look at him. "I keep my promises to you." "I said if." The little fellow persisted. "If you don't come out on time, then I'll go to the Tower of Punishment to find you." Mo Lien nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Okay. Then you and Rotten Peach Blossom have to work hard together. Strive to be released early and come out to see me together." Arbor gave a small yawn and wrapped her arms around his slender neck. She muttered to herself, "I miss you too, Lien." He hasn't left yet, but she's already thinking about him. Mo Lien turned to look at the little fellow on her shoulder. She smiled warmly and raised her hand to rub the back of the little fellow's head. That night, the Crown Prince didn't sleep at all, staring blankly at the little girl in his arms. It wasn't until dawn that he absent-mindedly regained his senses and looked at the white horizon as the sun slowly rose. He stuffed something into her palm and kissed her forehead. Only then did he release her hand and leave the room. He walked alone to a door that descended from the sky. Before entering the door, he turned to look deeply at the tightly shut door and secretly said in his heart, "Jojo, wait for me." He followed the door and suddenly disappeared from heaven and earth. Arbor seemed to have sensed something and suddenly opened her eyes. She subconsciously grabbed something in her hand and lowered her head. It turned out to be a palm-sized jade sculpture that was carved very vividly. A pair of beautiful phoenix eyes seemed to sparkle, blinking under the morning light. The little fellow frowned and her little face scrunched up. Holding the small sculpture in her hand, she didn't even bother to put on her outer robe and quickly rushed out the door. It was quiet outside the door and that fellow's figure was nowhere to be seen. The little fellow felt a little wronged and pursed her little mouth. She tightly held the small sculpture in her hand and stared with slightly red eyes at the empty space outside the room. It was clearly a sunny and beautiful day, but Jojo's heart was not feeling well. She returned to her room dejectedly and sat down for a while. Only then did she slowly wash up like an old cow dragging a broken cart. The Crown Prince's sudden departure shook the court greatly. Although he had made ample preparations, his departure made many old officials feel as if the sky was about to collapse. Even though the great king had repeatedly assured him that the Crown Prince was only going to the 6 prefectures to seek a higher level of cultivation, and that he would return in due time, he was certain that the Crown Prince would return. However, the courtiers were still listless and did not have the energy to work. He felt as if the soul of the entire Mo kingdom had been sucked away with the departure of the Crown Prince. Even with the Empress Dowager assisting the great king in handling state affairs, the old great king, who was used to enjoying life, had suffered a lot these days. Mo Shi and his group left with the prestige general Shi Guangfeng. Other than the second young master, Shi Guangyun, even the third young master, Shi Guangjin, was taken away. Arbor didn't know that third young master Shi Guangjin, this sentimental person, had asked Celestial Medicine Valley's Wenren Ningjing for medicine when Wu family's eldest Miss Wu Xiaosu was dying. However, when Wenren Ningjing saw Wu Xiaosu's condition, she only said 4 words, "No medicine works." When third young master Shi Guang saw that his sweetheart had died a tragic death, he immediately wanted to make trouble for Qiao Mu. However, he was stopped by second young master Shi Guangyun, who had outstanding insight. Chapter 1548. When his father, Duke Qing, found out about the situation, he gave his youngest son a good beating and didn't want to care about his life or death. However, his eldest brother, Shi Guangfeng, took pity on this brainless third brother and was worried that he would be beaten to death by his father. Thus, he pleaded for him and said that he should take him to the military camp to gain experience and let him grow into a real man. From now on, he would be indomitable and would no longer be distracted by love and so on. Only then did he take the third young master away. Of course, Arbor naturally didn't know about these things. However, even if she knew, she would only sneer. Fortunately, everyone in Duke Qing's estate was intelligent. If everyone was like this third young master, Shi Guangjin, then Duke Qing's estate wouldn't exist for long. These 2 days, no matter how badly the great king was overwhelmed, the little crown princess still ate and drank as usual. However, there was one thing that her mother-in-law, Her Highness Empress Zhao, came to invite her every day and strolled here and there. It was as if she had to cultivate a good relationship with her in these 2 days. This mother-in-law of hers seemed to be happy and cheerful every day. However, when Arbor took out the little jade figure carved by Mo Lien and placed it in front of her mother-in-law, Empress Zhao immediately hugged the little jade sculpture and bawled. Arbor originally had a taut little face and let her cry bitterly. However, after crying for a quarter of an hour, her makeup was ruined and she looked quite pitiful. She stepped forward and hesitated for a while before reaching out and hooking her arm around Empress Zhao's shoulder. She patted her and said, "Don't worry, I will bring him back soon." If the Tower of Punishment didn't let him go, she would go find him. After finding him, she would tear down the tower. With this thought in mind, Arbor's gaze became even more resolute as she nodded. "Emin, let's do it this way." "Mother misses him," Empress Zhao cried until her handkerchief was wet. She tightly held the little Mo Lien jade sculpture and didn't let go. Arbor wanted to take the jade carving back, but seeing her holding it so tightly, there was a hint of sadness on her face. The little fellow's eyebrows twitched slightly, and she said proudly, "Forget it, I'll give this jade carving to you." "Really, daughter-in-law?" Empress Zhao wiped her tears and looked up at her while holding the jade carving. Arbor nodded gloomily. Yeah. He didn't want to give it away. However, when he saw how much she missed her son and thought of his mother, Jojo's heart softened. Empress Zhao's tears turned into laughter. She used her sleeve to gently wipe away her tears. Thinking of the crown prince's words, she couldn't help but feel moved. Suddenly, she grabbed Xiao Qiao's hand and said softly, "Daughter-in-law, mother hasn't seen you smile for so long. You're about to leave, can't you smile at mother and let mother have some thoughts?" The little stoic's face was taut with a solemn expression. Empress Zhao saw this little lady blink as if she had worked hard for a long time before a stiff smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Empress Zhao really burst into laughter this time. She reached out to hold the child's hand and lamented, "Daughter-in-law, mother really regrets missing such a long time and not being able to get along with you properly. Mother is muddle-headed and only looks at the surface. I've lived for so many years in the depths of the palace, but I'm still so naive. I hope you can forgive mother," Empress Zhao said softly. "Also, mother still owes you a thank you." "No need," the little fellow replied stiffly and said dryly, "We're a family, there's no need for this." Queen Zhao smiled. Chapter 1549. This time, the normal passageway to the middle 6 prefectures that opened once every 10 years opened above the Mo kingdom capital. Thus, some cultivators who came after hearing the news, regardless of whether they came to watch the excitement or actually planned to climb the stairway to heaven, had already gathered in the Mo kingdom capital 2 to 3 days ago. Wei Nanfeng and Bailey she didn't return. The two actually also planned to climb the stairway to heaven and head to Shantian prefecture. When Xiaomi heard that her older cousin Bailey she was going to abandon her and head to Shantian prefecture, she immediately burst into tears and hugged Bailey Shi's arm, repeatedly saying, "Don't go, ah." Her crying made Bailey Shi's scalp numb, and he hastily withdrew his hand, wanting to run away and avoid her at any moment. Arbor stepped forward and pulled up the bawling Xiaomi. He glared at Bailey Shi and Wei Nanfeng, asking, "What are you two thinking? I didn't hear you two mention leaving Sikong planet before." Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but smile wryly. "Actually, I already had this plan a long time ago. In this world, if you don't advance, you'll fall behind. In order to better protect the country, I feel that I need to continue improving myself. Otherwise, I don't even understand that zombies aren't natural disasters but man-made disasters. A lifetime will pass in a muddle." Bailey Shi was even more blunt. Mo Lien is already so strong that she can cast aside all worldly affairs and seek the right path for cultivation. Why can't we do the same? Xiaomi immediately burst into tears and shouted with all her might, "I'm going too, I'm going too." Wei Nanfeng rolled his eyes at her. "What are you going for? Back then, I told you to cultivate properly. How could you listen? You're a measly level 6 mystic cultivator, so you naturally can't climb the stairway to heaven." "All right." Seeing her crying like a flood, Arbor couldn't help but tug at her sleeve. "We'll be back very soon." "That's right. Parting is only temporary. No matter where we go, Sikong planet's continent will forever be our home." Liang Qingqing, who was dressed in a simple cyan satin short robe and a pair of high boots, walked out in high spirits and smiled at Xiaomi being able to have little junior sister Liang, brother Wei, and brother Bailey accompany me to climb the stairway to heaven is truly a great joy in life. Situ Yi smiled and said, "Regardless of whether we can reach the end of the stairway to heaven tomorrow, at least we tried our best." "Me too." Doya appeared at the entrance of the flower pavilion in a red dress and smiled at Arbor. "Senior sister Doya, you've come out of seclusion." It seemed that Doya's breakthrough was rather smooth, and she had now successfully advanced to become a level 13 mystic cultivator. "Very good." Situ Yi clapped his hands and laughed heartily. "In this situation, I must drink a few cups to express the joy in my heart." Wei Nanfeng nodded and ordered someone to bring over strong liquor. Everyone shared a drink. Arbor put down his cup and said to Wei Nanfeng, "Bei Moi has cleaned up the distribution of Heavenly Fate's forces on Sikong planet these past few days, and he's dug out 20 to 30 strongholds of various sizes. How are things on your side?" "That's about the same." This organization should have suffered a great loss on our continent. I'm afraid they won't be able to do anything in the near future. The path to completely purging Heavenly Fate's people is long and dangerous. Situ-E smiled and raised his cup. But there will come a day when we will completely annihilate them and make them disappear from our home forever. That's right. At that time, our Seacone planet will definitely return to its original state. Everyone raised their cups again and downed the wine in their cups. Chapter 1550. It was noon. The entire sky above Seacone planet was enveloped by an auspicious aura. Arbor looked up at the sky, feeling that today's weather was especially bright, beautiful, and refreshing. She quietly stood at the side of the long street, and her entire person could feel the current intense atmosphere. Large streets and small alleys were crowded with crowds of spectators. If not for the guards on both sides guarding the large crowd of ordinary people, giving them a place to stand, they probably would have been swamped by the crowd long ago. Wei Nanfeng stepped forward and said, "It's already noon. I wonder when the stairway to heaven will descend." Logically speaking, the stairway to heaven has always appeared at noon in the past, Situ-E also muttered. But now that the time was almost over, the stairway to heaven actually hadn't appeared yet. He kept feeling that an accident might happen during the stairway to heaven operation this time. Xiao Mu glanced at the densely packed rows of people standing around her, big and small. Could it be these masses? Were they also going to climb the stairway to heaven with them? Everyone, please listen to me. Actually, the prerequisite for that stairway to heaven is that it requires the cultivation of an entry-level level 13 mystic cultivator. Moreover, it requires people who have comprehended a trace of the power of the 5 spirits to be able to climb. Liang Qingqing glanced at the crowd of spectators and couldn't help but twitch her mouth. The 5 spirits, the power of the 5 spirits, do you know? Do you understand? What I mean is that if you don't meet these 2 conditions, you generally can't even climb the first step, so there's no need to squeeze here and waste your energy. As soon as Liang Qingqing's words fell, a man with a big flat face immediately expressed his indignation. "Miss, how can you say that? Although you're talented and intelligent, you can't look down on us low-level little mystic cultivators." That's right, that's right. Who said that people who haven't reached level 13 mystic cultivator realm can't go up? If we don't try, how would we know it's impossible? That's right. Maybe heavenly law will show mercy this time and let us climb up together to broaden our horizons. Liang Qingqing was actually speechless. Glancing at the large group of people around her, Liang Qingqing kindly reminded, "The highest level among you is only a level 11 mystic cultivator. This is truly a bit difficult. If we can't climb the first step, we don't know what will happen." Yes. For safety's sake, you'd better disperse quickly. Don't fucking squeeze in here, causing those who really have the strength to be squeezed to the back and buried in the crowd, unable to get over. Isn't this a joke? There was a time limit for ascending the stairway to heaven. If one could not ascend within 6 hours, the stairway to heaven would close. He would wait for another 10 years before opening it again. You're just a bunch of onlookers. You have nothing better to do, yet you're crowding around here. Don't you know that others are in a hurry? TSK. What right do you have to let us go? How do you know if you don't try? I don't care. I want to climb the stairway to heaven. Sky Ascension Stairway, Sky Ascension Stairway. The 100 or so little mystic cultivators actually cried out in protest. Among them, many had rushed over from the east and west from thousands of kilometers away in order to participate in this grand occasion of ascending the stairway to heaven and also to try their luck. There was no way they could chase them away now. Amidst the clamor, a sudden clap of thunder appeared in the clear sky. Chapter 1551. The door is here. Everyone excitedly looked up. Thousands of miles below the sky, layers of cloud-like stairs appeared one after another. They tilted down one by one, as if a cloud ladder had been laid out between the sky and the earth. The sky-ascending stairs had appeared. Everyone held their breaths and scrambled to be the first to rush up the cloud ladder. Arbor leaned to the side to avoid the people who rushed past her with flushed and excited faces. A hint of displeasure flitted across her face. She didn't know what was there to be so excited about. Wasn't it just going to the 6 prefectures continent? It was as boring as ascending to heaven to become an immortal. Wei Ziqin, Qiao Zhongbang, and second uncle's family had also come. They originally wanted to see Jojo climb the sky-ascending stairs, but now, they were actually snatched away by the crowd of onlookers. The scene was a bit chaotic. Wei Nanfeng opened his mouth, but when he saw the crowd's surging emotions, he tactfully shut his mouth again. What could he say to these people? They wouldn't give up until they hit a wall. He would just let them experience the feeling of climbing the sky-ascending stairs themselves. Jojo, are we going to follow them and climb the stairs? Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but turn to ask Arbor when he saw the swarm of little mystic cultivators rushing to the front like a swarm of bees and had already reached the first step. Arbor, climb your sister. Didn't you see the crowd in front? How could there be space for people to step on the first step? Yu Xiu led Lightning Begonia, Hidden Flower, Hidden Current, and Night Charm's Midnight Xiao Yi and waited for the crowd to disperse with great difficulty before they could quickly run to the young Crown Princess side. Looking at the sea of people in front, they turned to ask the young Crown Princess, how about this subordinate send people to clean up those people in front? Clean up what? It's the same even if we go over later. They were merely a bunch of clowns. Let them hit a wall once and they would naturally return. As they spoke, 2 black figures swiftly swept past the crowd and laughed loudly. A bunch of ants dares to block this lord's path. Out of the way. The newcomer quickly sent 2 palms forward. Immediately, more than a dozen people were sent flying. They vomited blood and fell to the ground. Seeing the 2's overbearing skills, the young mystic cultivators were all terrified and hastily retreated to make way. When the 2 of them landed on the first step of the stairway to heaven, everyone could see that they were a pair of men in their early 60s. From the looks of it, he wasn't young, and his cultivation had barely reached level 13. If he couldn't ascend the celestial stairway to the 6 prefectures this time, he probably wouldn't be able to ascend it again in this lifetime. A bunch of ants, how dare you block our path? Out of the way. One of them flicked his sleeve and swept away 2 to 3 small mystic cultivators who were still pacing back and forth at the entrance to the first step. He then looked at them contemptuously, and the 2 old brothers immediately walked up the stairs. Seeing the 2 easily cross the first step, no matter how much the group of small mystic cultivators resented other people's strength, they could only inwardly sigh and express their submission. Just now, the group of them had burrowed under the first step like ants in a nest. No matter how they stretched out their legs or stretched their bodies, they were unable to ascend the first step. As expected, that young lady was right. There should be restrictions on ascending the stairway to heaven. Seeing the small mystic cultivators noisily move to the side and no longer block the path, Liang Qingqing's eyes lit up. Little junior sister, let's go. Chapter 1552. Wait. Arbor reached out and grabbed Liang Qingqing's hand. She shook her head and said, look again. Liang Qingqing was about to ask her what she was looking at when she heard a scream from above. 2 figures were falling down at an extremely fast speed. Boom. They crashed onto the ground, causing a cloud of dust to fly up. Liang Qingqing blinked and looked at the 2 old brothers who had rushed up the stairs in high spirits. They were now like country bumpkins, unable to get up for a long time. Are you guys alright? Liang Qingqing couldn't help but ask. Don't ask, junior sister Liang. Situ Yi waved his folding fan and smiled suavely. It looks like the 2 of them have fainted. Let's go. Arbor was relieved. At most, they wouldn't be able to climb up and would be swept down. They would just faint, but their lives wouldn't be in any danger. What's on the stairway to heaven? Liang Qingqing asked curiously. The few of them followed Arbor and arrived in front of the first flight of stairs. Arbor looked back at her parents and family and nodded at them. Under her family's expectant gaze, she easily jumped up the first flight of the stairway to heaven. But after she reached the top of the stairs, her figure disappeared in front of everyone's eyes like a fog. Moreover, Liang Qingqing and the rest were clearly behind her just now, but now they couldn't see each other. She was the only one left on the endless ladder that stretched up into the sky. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked up at the clouds in the blue sky. Her heart was at ease and she actually started running up. So what if it was the stairway to heaven? It was just a stairway to heaven. Could it be that she, Arbor, couldn't conquer it? Roar! A roar suddenly came from the stairs in front of her. It was enough to shake her down. But Arbor wasn't moved at all. Her figure flashed and she quickly rushed up, completely ignoring the roar coming from the depths of the clouds. It was just the stairway to heaven. It wasn't like she had to cross a mountain of swords or plunge into a pot of boiling oil. What was there to be afraid of? Arbor pursed her lips and climbed all the way up, silently counting the number of steps in her heart. After counting, she found that it was already more than 2,700 steps. If someone were to see her now, they would definitely be dumbfounded. He couldn't figure out how this person could climb the stairway to heaven at such an inhuman speed. At this moment, there was a great distance between them. Situ Yi reached the 993rd floor. Wei Nanfeng and Bailey Shooting reached over 700, while Liang Qingqing reached over 600. Yu Xiao and the others had more or less reached the 800th level. Compared to the speed of a normal person, there was no comparison at all. However, Miss Qiao did not know what was going on. She just kept running up. The closer she got to the end of the stairway, the louder the roars of the beasts became. Suddenly, a black bear jumped down from the ladder. Qiao Mu leaped up and smashed her fist into that black bear's left eye socket. With a kick, the black bear rolled down the ladder miserably. Situ Yi, who was standing on the 1001st step, took a deep breath and turned his head to look. He didn't know what ghost had rolled down from his side. He felt a little strange in his heart, but he continued to climb up. Bang! It's coming, it's coming. Someone fell down. Someone shouted gloatingly. When the crowd below the ladder saw clearly, the one who suddenly jumped out and roared at everyone was not the person who went up just now, but a black bear. What the hell? Everyone was so scared that they pissed their pants and hurriedly scattered. Chapter 1553. But strangely enough, the black bear that fell from the cloud ladder did not attack anyone else. Its pair of small eyes were horrified as if it had seen a monster. It glanced at everyone and then hurriedly turned around, scurrying up the cloud ladder on all fours. In a flash, it disappeared without a trace. Everyone stared speechlessly at the black bear's running figure. They looked at each other. You suddenly fell from the cloud ladder and scared people half to death, and you still have reason? 8th Princess Mou chuckled. This must be a black bear. Arbor naturally did not know about the following episode. She only cared about climbing all the way up. At this moment, she had already arrived at a large door carved from white marble. This large door stood indomitable in front of her. It was tightly shut, and it was useless to push. There were 5 palm-shaped grooves on the door. They respectively represented the 5 spirits of water, fire, earth, wood, and thunder. So that was the case. If someone did not comprehend a trace of the 5 spirits, even if they painstakingly climbed up the cloud ladder, they would not be able to enter this door at all. Therefore, there was simply no need to wait for Situ Yi and the rest. Because the heavenly Tao would not allow everyone to enter together. It was testing one's cultivation and the 5 spirits respectively. Naturally, it had to separate everyone and consider them individually. She could only wish Situ Yi and the rest good luck. Without any psychological burden, Miss Xiao first reached out and pressed on the grooves that represented the 5 spirits. It did not require much effort, nor did it require you to inject spiritual energy. This groove was only to sense if there was a spirit meridian in your body. If there was, then it would be fine. The door quickly opened in front of Arbor. Just as Miss Xiao was about to step in, she saw many crooked words engraved on both sides of the door. This door was really too tall, and those words were engraved very high. Therefore, Arbor did not notice at all at first. Now, she realized that there were many names engraved on it. The format was uniformly written, "Who was here?" Arbor tilted her head and thought that since everyone had left their names, then she should leave one too. Thus, she suddenly flew up, took out a gold-beaded talisman pen, and engraved a few delicate and pretty words, "Miss Xiao was here." Then, with a flash, she entered the door. An hour later, Situ Yi was the first to arrive at the white marble door. Following that, he discovered Miss Xiao's message. Senior brother Situ thought to himself, this must be a message that junior sister left for everyone. She's telling them that she's already gone in first and that they should hurry up and follow. Yes, that must be the case. In that case, he had to leave a secret signal for his brothers behind. Thus, Situ Yi wrote a few words beside Darling Qiao's handwriting. Senior martial brother Situ was here. Then, he entered the door with a satisfied expression. After that, everyone followed suit and left their names. As a result, after 100 years, the new talents had no place to leave their notes. They pointed at the white marble door, commenting on the ugly handwriting and funny comments. What's senior brother Situ? Whose senior brother are you? That's a story for another day. After Miss Xiao entered the door, she walked through a white corridor. At first, she couldn't tell which direction she was going in. With a flick of his finger, over a dozen rail-guiding butterflies flew out from Paradise Planet. They flapped their wings and flew forward. It wouldn't be too late to let the rail-guiding butterflies wander around and find a way out before following, lest she wandered around like a headless fly. After a while, a few butterflies flew back and flapped their wings to lead the way. Chapter 1554. Arbor immediately followed, following several guiding butterflies into the depths of the white fog. At the same time, in an abandoned old residence on the outskirts of the Mo Kingdom capital, an extremely tight secret experiment was being conducted. A woman's pained and hoarse cries continuously sounded from the small, claustrophobic room. A person's back was facing the night sky as he toyed with an old metal ghost mask between his slender fingers. A languid curve faintly slid across the corners of his mouth. The high priest died an unnatural death. Siming Manor was exposed in front of people. TSK, so many years of hard work went down the drain. It's truly disappointing. 2 black-clothed subordinates stood behind him. They lowered their heads submissively and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Eager for quick success and instant benefits. The high priest was too anxious, so his identity was exposed. From the very beginning, when the mystic beast forest used the news of the phoenix egg to lure people over, people began to suspect him. He's just as stupid as his master. That guy was anxious to destroy the water source, but he didn't make sufficient preparations, so he still failed in the end. The 2 black-clothed subordinates continued to act as wooden pillars, not saying a word. They, as small fries, didn't dare to meddle in their master's affairs. It wasn't good to respond, but it wasn't good to disagree either, so they might as well shut up. The stronghold on Seacone Planet has already been mostly destroyed. We can't continue like this. Go to other lower star domains to continue the experiment. Withdraw all the remaining forces on Seacone Planet. Withdraw the remaining forces on Seacone Planet? Did this mean they had to abandon Seacone Planet, this great experimental ground? But could their master make the decision on such a major matter by himself? The 2 black-clothed subordinates looked up at their master in shock. Their master's back was facing them. After throwing down this sentence, he strode out of the door. When he stepped out of the door, he suddenly chuckled and said, "Take that woman inside and evacuate by today. Do you understand?" Yes. He decided to give up this useless experimental ground for the sake of better development in the future. Rather than wasting time with the local tyrants on Seacombe Planet, it was better to develop experimental bases in other lower star domains. There were so many lower star domains that could allow them to develop experimental bases. There was no need to fight to the death with those tough bones on Seacombe Planet. It wasn't worth it. And tiring. Ah. Hoarse cries rang out from the small, claustrophobic laboratory. He saw a person whose entire body had been scratched by zombies. Her hands and feet were tightly tied to a bed that was used for experiments. Several doctors were beside her, preparing a scalpel. "How is it?" A young man wearing a yiksha mask walked in with a sneer on his face. "Hall Master Gong." The group of doctors hurriedly turned around and saluted the young man. "It's about time." This woman was bitten and scratched by the zombie horde, but miraculously survived. If there are no accidents, she will be the first in our heavenly fate to evolve into a high-level corpse puppet. I can only give you half an incense stick's worth of time at most. We have to leave through the special passage immediately. Hall Master Gong paused for a moment before continuing. "The sky above the Mo Kingdom capital is controlled by a strange shielding array. After we leave this time, I reckon that we won't be able to return through this shielding array for several years. That's why you must not leave anything behind. Take everything that should be taken away, especially those important research materials," Hall Master Gong reminded. "Yes, Sir Hall Master. This subordinate will definitely handle this matter with utmost care." Roar. The female corpse on the bed suddenly opened her eyes and roared angrily. The area around her eyelids had been gnawed clean, and her pair of bulging eyeballs looked terrifying and frightening. She was roaring, but she already couldn't form a coherent sentence. This is a high-level corpse puppet? She hasn't completely evolved yet. She still needs some time. Under Hall Master Gong's intimidating gaze, the doctors broke out in a cold sweat. She has great potential. Perhaps she can even evolve into a humanoid special-grade corpse puppet in the future. Oh. Hall Master Gong's eyelids twitched. Ah. The female corpse let out a series of roars. Hall Master Gong's gaze ultimately settled on that utterly rotten face. "You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.